It was an ordinary day, or so it seemed. The courtroom was packed, the atmosphere thick with anticipation. The judge's gavel echoed across the room, signaling the beginning of what everyone thought would be another routine legal battle for Elon Musk. However, as the proceedings began, no one could have predicted the shocking turn of events that would unfold, leaving the world at the edge of their seats. Hit subscribe and leave a comment with where you're watching from. This story might just spark a new beginning. What's one thing that always pushes you forward, even when things get tough? The question was simple, but the answer would be anything but. For those watching the trial live, this would become a moment they would never forget. Musk sat in his chair, calm, collected, but there was something in his eyes, something that hinted at the storm brewing just beneath the surface. The courtroom had been silent for what seemed like an eternity when the judge, a middle-aged man with a stern expression, glanced over at the defense table. His eyes locked with Elon's for a brief, almost imperceptible moment before the judge spoke up. "Mr. Musk, you have been accused of..." The words never quite made it out of the judge's mouth. Suddenly, a sharp, booming voice cut him off. "Objection, Your Honor." It was a calm yet authoritative voice. Elon Musk had risen to his feet, his posture poised, his expression unreadable. The room froze, and even the judge seemed taken aback. "Your Honor," Musk continued, his voice even but carrying an edge of something deeper. "I believe this court is forgetting one very important thing. I am not just here as a defendant. I am here as someone who serves a much greater purpose than this trial." A collective gasp swept across the courtroom. The judge's brow furrowed, unsure how to respond. It wasn't common for a defendant to speak so boldly in the midst of a trial. Musk's attorneys exchanged nervous glances, clearly unprepared for this interruption. Musk wasn't following the usual script. He was rewriting it. The judge cleared his throat, trying to regain control. "Mr. Musk, this is a court of law, not a platform for speeches. Do you have a valid objection?" Musk didn't flinch. "I do, Your Honor." With one fluid motion, he reached into the inside pocket of his suit jacket and pulled out a small, official-looking badge. He held it up for everyone in the room to see. The metallic surface of the badge shimmered under the courtroom lights, and the words U.S. Secret Service were clearly visible. A moment of complete silence passed. Then, chaos erupted. Is that a U.S. Secret Service badge?" Someone from the gallery whispered, their voice barely audible but laden with disbelief. The judge stared at the badge for a long moment, his face a mix of confusion and suspicion. His gavel thudded on the bench, trying to restore order. "What is the meaning of this, Mr. Musk?" the judge demanded, his voice suddenly shaky. Musk, still calm, spoke with the same authority. "It means that I have a very different role in this case than anyone realizes. And it means that this court may not be aware of the full extent of what's going on here." The room was in utter shock. No one had expected this. Elon Musk, the visionary entrepreneur who had transformed the worlds of space exploration and electric cars, had just dropped a bombshell. He wasn't just a defendant in a trial. He had a connection to the U.S. government that no one could have anticipated. The question was, how deep did this connection go? The prosecutor stood up, his face flushed with anger. "Objection, Your Honor. This is an absurd display." Musk is clearly trying to distract the court with theatrics. But Musk's eyes remained steady. He wasn't concerned with the prosecutor's objections. He wasn't concerned with the judge's bewildered stare. The world, the media, everyone in that courtroom was now watching him. And he knew that this moment, this trial, was about to take a turn that no one could have predicted. "Mr. Musk," the judge finally said, after a tense pause, "are you implying that you have special clearance for this trial? That you are somehow above the law?" "No, Your Honor," Musk replied, his voice as composed as ever. "I'm not above the law, but I do have connections that could change the course of this trial." He let the words hang in the air, a challenge. And with that, the atmosphere in the courtroom shifted. What had begun as a standard legal case was now a web of intrigue and speculation. Musk wasn't just any billionaire tech mogul. He was someone with powerful allies, and the revelation of the Secret Service badge hinted at something far bigger than anyone had imagined. "Mr. Musk, I suggest you sit down and allow the proceedings to continue in an orderly fashion, the judge finally said, his tone much more cautious than before. Musk didn't sit down. Instead, he turned slightly toward the gallery, locking eyes with the spectators. For a brief second, it felt as though he was speaking directly to each one of them. You see, he began, his tone shifting, this isn't just about a court case. It's about something much larger, something that affects all of us. We live in a world where the rules are constantly changing, where power isn't just held by those in charge, but by those who can navigate the system. He paused, letting the weight of his words settle in. Today, I'm here not just as a man accused, but as someone who understands that sometimes the truth is far stranger than fiction, and sometimes the truth is hidden in plain sight. The judge, clearly flustered, gestured for Musk to sit. Enough, Mr. Musk. We'll continue this trial in the manner that was intended. But Musk's words had already planted a seed. From that moment on, the case was no longer just about the legal issues at hand. It was about uncovering the truth behind the man who had just revealed a powerful secret. And as the proceedings continued, no one could escape the questions that now swirled around Musk. Why did he have a U.S. Secret Service badge? What was his real role in this court case? And most importantly, what did this mean for the future of not just the trial, but for the power structures that govern the world? The stage was set, and the real story was just beginning. Hit subscribe and leave a comment with where you're watching from. This story might just spark a new beginning. What's one thing that always pushes you forward, even when things get tough? Elon Musk, the name itself has become synonymous with innovation, ambition, and a daring vision for the future. But behind the headlines, behind the futuristic dreams of SpaceX rockets and self-driving Teslas, is a man who has had his own trials and tribulations. The story of Elon Musk is one of relentless drive, immense highs, and crushing lows. An emotional roller coaster that has shaped him into the man standing before the court today. Born in Pretoria, South Africa, in 1971, Elon Musk was a dreamer from the very beginning. As a child, he was often lost in books, his mind racing with ideas and possibilities. His mother, May Musk, a model and dietitian, raised him with a sense of independence, while his father, Elon Musk, an electromechanical engineer, exposed him to the world of technology. Musk's early fascination with science fiction and technology would ultimately shape his destiny. By the time he was a teenager, he was already a computer whiz, teaching himself to code and creating a video game called Blaster, which he sold for $500. At the time, it seemed like just another young boy's hobby. Little did anyone know, it was the first spark in the fire that would grow into one of the most ambitious tech empires in the world. As a teenager, Musk's life wasn't without its struggles. He was bullied in school and found it hard to connect with others. His relationship with his father was strained, and the emotional toll was often overwhelming. But instead of retreating, Musk channeled his pain into productivity, using it as fuel for his future. He moved to Canada at 17 to attend Queen's University and later transferred to the University of Pennsylvania. It was there that his dream of transforming the world began to take shape. He earned degrees in both physics and economics, but it was his hunger for innovation that truly set him apart from his peers. It wasn't long before Musk made the leap into the entrepreneurial world, founding Zip2, a software company that helped newspapers go digital. After selling Zip2 for $307 million, Musk wasn't content to rest. He sold the company and used the money to launch X.com, an online payment system. X.com would eventually become PayPal, and when it was sold to eBay for $1.5 billion, Musk's life changed forever. But even with all this wealth, Musk wasn't interested in basking in the glory of success. He had a much bigger vision: to revolutionize space travel, redefine transportation, and explore new energy frontiers. The creation of SpaceX in 2002, his electric car company Tesla in 2004, and the founding of SolarCity were the first steps in his quest to change the world. But Musk's story was far from straightforward. Each of his ventures faced immense obstacles. SpaceX had 3 failed launches before it finally succeeded. Tesla was on the verge of bankruptcy more times than anyone could count. And yet, Musk never backed down. He put everything on the line: his money, his time, his reputation. because he truly believed in his vision for the future. But beyond the headlines and the business accolades, Musk's personal life was full of challenges as well. He has been married 3 times, twice to Tallulah Riley and once to Justine Musk, with whom he shares 5 children. His relationships have been widely covered by the media, and Musk has often been portrayed as a man who can't balance his work and personal life. Yet, despite the media's portrayal of his emotional struggles, Musk has always come across as a man driven by purpose, even if that purpose came at the cost of his personal happiness. Now, here he was in a courtroom, facing accusations that threatened to undo everything he had built. The legal case at hand wasn't just about a business dispute. It was about something much larger. The stakes were high, and the future of his empire was on the line. But Musk wasn't backing down. His eyes, sharp and calculating, hinted at the confidence of a man who had been through much worse. He had survived the hardest moments in his life, from near bankruptcy to public ridicule, and had come out stronger each time. As the courtroom buzzed with whispers about the Secret Service badge he had just revealed, Musk's mind was elsewhere. He wasn't thinking about the current case. His mind was racing back to the events that led him here. Why did he have this badge? How did this all connect to the trial at hand? The truth was, the badge was not just a symbol of some high-level government clearance. It was a link to a much larger, more intricate web that Musk had woven over the years. His involvement with the U.S. Secret Service wasn't public knowledge, and it wasn't something he had ever planned to reveal. But today, it felt inevitable. It felt like the right moment to remind the world of the power and influence that went beyond his business empire. Musk's ties to the U.S. government were not as surprising as some might think. After all, his ventures, from Tesla's electric vehicles to SpaceX's missions to Mars, had the potential to reshape not just the private sector, but national security as well. But to the public, Musk had always been seen as an outsider, a visionary who operated outside of traditional power structures. This badge was his reminder that, even in his most rebellious moments, he was still very much part of the system. As Musk sat back down in the courtroom, his gaze shifted from the judge to the faces around him. His attorneys, who had been unprepared for this turn of events, were now scrambling to adjust their strategy. The prosecutor, too, seemed shaken by the sudden appearance of the badge. The entire room had shifted. The mood had changed. This trial was no longer about business. It was about power. Musk knew the world would soon be asking questions. Why did he have such powerful connections? Was this all part of some larger plan? And, most importantly, why had he waited until now to reveal it? But for now, the answers would have to wait. The trial was only beginning, and Musk was ready for whatever came next. The revelation of the badge was just the first step in a story that was about to unfold in ways no one could have predicted. And as for the rest of the world, they were about to witness the unraveling of a mystery that could change everything. The courtroom was on edge, and the air felt heavier than ever. Musk's unexpected revelation about the U.S. Secret Service badge had left the room in a state of stunned silence. No one knew exactly what to make of it, but one thing was clear. This was no ordinary trial. There were layers to this story, layers that no one had anticipated. As the judge regained some composure and the proceedings continued, a simmering tension began to build, both in the courtroom and within the minds of those watching. The prosecutor, a sharp and tenacious lawyer named Sarah Brooks, had been thrown off balance. Her usual composure faltered for just a moment, but she quickly regained control. She stood up and addressed the judge, her voice cold and commanding. "Your Honor, we request that the defendant be held in contempt for attempting to disrupt these proceedings with this display." She gestured toward the U.S. Secret Service badge still resting on the table in front of Musk, as if it were some strange artifact that had no place in the courtroom. The judge, still clearly flustered by the unexpected turn of events, took a moment to process what had happened. His gavel came down hard, signaling a temporary pause in the proceedings. "I am aware, Mr. Musk, that your career and your personal life have often placed you in the public eye," the judge began, his voice steady, though still laced with uncertainty. "But this trial is not the place for such theatrics. You will put the badge away, and we will proceed with the case." Musk didn't flinch. He carefully slid the badge back into his jacket pocket, his expression unreadable. It wasn't that he didn't understand the gravity of the situation. It was that he had learned long ago to handle pressure with grace. Musk knew the value of patience, of waiting for the right moment to strike. As the judge attempted to steer the trial back on course, the tension in the room continued to simmer. Every witness called to the stand, every piece of evidence presented, felt overshadowed by the looming question of Musk's true involvement with the government. The whispers around the courtroom grew louder. Lawyers exchanged glances, reporters scribbled furiously in their notepads, and the spectators leaned in, hoping to catch the next big revelation. But what no one knew, what Musk knew better than anyone, was that this trial was only a small part of something much larger. Behind the scenes, there were forces at play that went beyond business disputes or courtroom drama. There were political players, government agencies, and corporate rivals, all moving pieces on a much larger chessboard. And Musk was at the center of it all, whether the world realized it or not. As the day wore on, Musk couldn't shake the feeling that the trial was becoming a mere distraction. The U.S. Secret Service badge wasn't just a piece of metal. It was a symbol of something bigger, something that involved not only his company but his entire vision for the future of the world. If he was going to be dragged into this courtroom, he had no intention of sitting quietly. He had his own strategy, his own way of pushing the story forward. But first, he needed to find out who was really behind this, who had orchestrated the attacks against him, and more importantly, who stood to gain from bringing him down. His mind raced as the trial continued. He thought about the people who had been circling his life for years, some allies, some enemies, some who wanted to see him succeed, and others who wanted to see him fail. But Musk knew that in this high-stakes game, nothing was ever truly as it seemed. There were always hidden motives, secret alliances, and plans within plans. Outside the courtroom, the world had begun to take notice. Social media was ablaze with speculation about Musk's involvement with the Secret Service. News outlets, both traditional and digital, were running wild with theories, and soon, the hashtag Musk badge was trending worldwide. Everyone had an opinion, but no one had the full picture. Yet, the more the world speculated, the more Musk's power grew. He was no longer just a figurehead of innovation. He was now a symbol of mystery, of secrecy, and of something far more dangerous than anyone had anticipated. It wasn't long before the courtroom's tension reached a boiling point. Sarah Brooks stood again, this time with a look of determination in her eyes. "Your Honor," she began, her voice cutting through the thick silence, "we are requesting that Elon Musk be held responsible for his actions in this case. We believe that he is using his influence, his wealth, and now apparently his government ties, to manipulate these proceedings." The room fell into complete silence as her words hung in the air. Musk's eyes narrowed, and for the first time since the trial began, he stood up. He was ready to speak, ready to take control of the narrative once more. "Your Honor," Musk said, his voice firm but calm, "I am not here to manipulate anyone. I'm here to defend myself against false accusations. And I am not afraid to expose the truth, no matter where it leads. If you want to understand why this trial is happening, then you need to understand the forces that are at play behind the scenes." For a moment, it felt as though the entire courtroom held its breath, waiting for Musk to reveal his next move. The tension in the room was palpable. The judge, Sarah Brooks, the spectators, they all waited for the bombshell to drop. But Musk, with his signature confidence, simply stood there, allowing the suspense to build, knowing that his next words would change everything. "The truth," Musk continued, "is far more complex than anyone in this room realizes. This case is just the tip of the iceberg, and I assure you, the story I have to tell is far bigger than anything you've heard so far." The judge's expression hardened. "Mr. Musk," he said, "you are treading a fine line. Do not use this courtroom for theatrics." Musk glanced at the gallery, his eyes scanning the room. "Theatrics?" he asked, his voice soft yet undeniably powerful. "What if I told you that everything we know about this trial, everything we think we understand, is based on lies?" There was a pause, as everyone processed his words. The room was electric with tension, and in that moment, Musk knew that this trial, this seemingly routine legal battle, had just become something far more significant. This wasn't just about clearing his name. This was about exposing the truth. And now, the storm had truly begun. As the days wore on, the tension in the courtroom reached a fever pitch. The initial shock of Elon Musk's revelation had given way to something far more dangerous: uncertainty. Questions were swirling in the air like storm clouds, and with each passing moment, the stakes of the trial seemed to grow higher and higher. But Musk wasn't concerned with the immediate drama. His mind was already focused on the bigger picture, a conspiracy that had been carefully hidden just beneath the surface of his life. It was all starting to make sense. He had known that there were people, powerful people, who wanted to see him fail. His success had made him a target, not just for corporate rivals, but for those in the shadows, operating with an agenda that went far beyond business. This trial, this orchestrated attack on his character, was just the latest in a long line of attempts to discredit him. But this time, Musk wasn't going to sit back and let the narrative be controlled. He was going to fight back, not just for himself, but for the future he believed in. It was late one evening, hours after the courtroom had adjourned, when Musk found himself staring at the night sky through the window of his office. The glowing city lights below reflected his own internal turmoil. The future of Tesla, SpaceX, and all the companies he had built with his own hands were hanging in the balance. But there was something else gnawing at him, a deeper unease. The conspiracy wasn't just about him. It was about something far larger, something that tied together government officials, corporate elites, and secretive factions within his own companies. As Musk sat back in his chair, he heard the soft knock on his office door. His head snapped up, and he motioned for the visitor to enter. Standing in the doorway was a man he trusted more than most, Nathan Daniels, his most loyal confidant and head of security at Tesla. Nathan was a quiet man, but he was a force to be reckoned with. Musk had often turned to him for counsel, and it was Nathan who had helped him navigate many of the threats that had been made against him over the years. But tonight, there was something in Nathan's eyes that Musk had never seen before: fear. "Nate, what's going on?" Musk asked, his voice tinged with concern. Nathan stepped forward, closing the door behind him. "Elon, I've been digging into some of the reports. I've been tracing the financial backers of the people behind this trial, and I found something disturbing." Musk leaned forward, his heart racing. He had known that something was off, but hearing those words from Nathan confirmed his suspicions. "What did you find?" Musk asked. Nathan took a deep breath before answering. "There's a group, a shadow organization. They've been pulling strings for years, manipulating markets, funding rivals, and even influencing government policy. They're connected to some of the highest-ranking officials, both in the U.S. government and overseas." Musk's mind was already racing, connecting the dots. He had always suspected that there was a deeper game being played, but now, hearing it from Nathan, it all became clearer. The people who had been undermining him weren't just doing it for the sake of business. They had a much more sinister goal in mind. They wanted to control the future, his future. "Who are they?" Musk asked, his voice low and intense. "They call themselves the Syndicate," Nathan said, his voice barely above a whisper. "And they've been operating under the radar for years. They have fingers in every pie, from tech to energy, even space exploration. They've been using their wealth and influence to control major players, and now, it looks like they've set their sights on you." Musk's gaze hardened. He had heard rumors of shadowy organizations before, but the idea that such a powerful group existed, with the ability to manipulate world events and business outcomes, was unsettling even for him. "This trial is just the beginning, isn't it?" Musk asked, his voice a mix of frustration and determination. Nathan nodded grimly. "They're using this legal case to discredit you, to tarnish your reputation. They know you're a threat to their plans. If they can break you down, they can weaken your influence. And if they can weaken your influence, they can control the future." For a moment, Musk was silent, processing everything that Nathan had just revealed. The weight of the conspiracy was crushing, but at the same time, something inside him clicked. He had been facing these attacks for years, but now, it wasn't just about personal survival. It was about something much bigger, the future of humanity itself. Musk stood up from his desk, pacing the room. His mind was working at full speed. "We need to expose them. We need to make sure everyone knows who they really are. Nathan raised an eyebrow. How? You're in the middle of a trial, Elon. If we go public with this now, they'll bury us before we even get a chance to speak. Musk stopped pacing and looked directly at Nathan. Then we go underground. We find out who they are, and we expose them quietly. We build our case, piece by piece, and then when the time is right, we bring it all to light. We take the power back. Nathan hesitated for a moment, clearly torn between his loyalty to Musk and the danger of challenging such a powerful adversary. But in the end, his resolve was unwavering. I'm with you, Elon. Let's do this. With a sense of purpose that had not been there before, Musk knew that the path ahead would not be easy. But for the first time since the trial had begun, he felt a renewed sense of clarity. The battle was no longer just about him. It was about protecting the future, about ensuring that his vision for a better world could survive. The courtroom was just the beginning. The real war was only starting, and Musk was determined to fight it on his terms. The following days felt like a pressure cooker, with each moment tightening the screws on Musk's already strained nerves. The conspiracy, now out in the open, seemed to overshadow everything else. As he and Nathan worked quietly behind the scenes, gathering information on the syndicate, there was a deep, unsettling realization that the truth would come with a heavy price. And while Musk had always been prepared for the weight of his actions, he had never anticipated just how costly this particular battle would be, not only to him but to those closest to him. It was early one morning when the call came. Musk had just finished a strategy session with Nathan when his phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen, recognizing the name immediately. It was his sister, Tosca Musk. He hadn't spoken to her much lately. Things had been chaotic, and he'd been so consumed by the trial and the looming threat of the syndicate that he hadn't kept in touch with family. Tosca was always there for him, though, and her call now made his stomach twist with anxiety. There was something urgent in the way she had reached out. "Hello?" he answered, his voice tight. "Elon." Tosca's voice was strained, and there was an unmistakable crack in it. "I don't know how to tell you this, but I've just gotten some disturbing news." Musk's heart skipped a beat. What's happened? His mind raced to all the potential dangers his family could be facing now that the syndicate was in the picture. Tosca took a deep breath before speaking. "It's the trial. They're not just coming after you. They're coming after the people you care about, too. I've received threats, and I think they might be targeting me next." The words hit Musk like a punch to the gut. He had always known that his enemies would stop at nothing to get to him, but he had never imagined that his family would be dragged into this war. Tosca had always been the one to hold his world together when everything else fell apart, but now she was in danger. "Are you okay?" he asked urgently. "I'm fine, Elon, but we need to be careful. They're everywhere. Surveillance, people watching me. I don't know how long I can keep it together without more help." Musk's mind raced. He couldn't afford to lose any more ground. Not now. Not when everything was on the line. "I'll fix this. I'll get to the bottom of this. I'll make sure you're safe." The conversation ended with Tosca's cautious reassurance, but the weight of the threat against her lingered heavily on Musk's shoulders. He had always been driven by a need to protect the ones he loved, but this was different. This wasn't just a personal vendetta anymore. This was an all-out assault on his family, his life, and his future. As Musk stood there, the weight of the moment crashing down on him, Nathan stepped up beside him, his expression grave. "We can't wait any longer," Nathan said, his voice low and serious. "We need to make our move. The syndicate won't stop until they've taken everything from you. We need to strike back." Musk nodded, his thoughts swirling with urgency. He had been playing a long game, gathering intel, waiting for the right moment to expose the syndicate for what it truly was. But now, with his sister in danger and the conspiracy growing bigger by the day, he realized that the time for waiting was over. The emotional stakes were too high. His family's safety, his vision for the future, everything was hanging in the balance. "We can't let them win," Musk said, the fire in his voice unmistakable. "It's time to go public. We expose them now." The plan was simple, yet incredibly risky. Musk would publicly reveal everything he had uncovered about the syndicate. The connection between the shadowy organization, the government figures involved, and the corporate giants that had been pulling the strings would all be laid bare. It was a gamble, but it was the only way to push back against the powerful adversaries who thought they could control him. That night, Musk met with his closest allies, including Nathan, his legal team, and a handful of trusted journalists who had been investigating the conspiracy alongside them. The room was filled with tension, but also a shared sense of resolve. Musk had always been a visionary, someone who believed in the power of innovation and progress. But now, he was fighting for something more than just technological advancements. He was fighting for his family, for his legacy, and for the truth. "We do this now, and we do it together," Musk said, his voice steady as he addressed the group. "There's no turning back." The following hours were a blur of activity: phone calls, finalizing the evidence, and preparing statements. Musk knew the risks, but he also knew that the truth had a power all its own. The syndicate, as well as the politicians and corporate players hiding behind it, had underestimated the resilience of one man. Musk had always believed that the future belonged to those who were willing to take bold risks, to challenge the status quo. Now, it was time for him to lead by example. As dawn approached, Musk stood outside his office building, looking out over the city skyline. The first light of day was just beginning to illuminate the horizon, casting a soft glow over the world. It was the calm before the storm, and Musk couldn't shake the feeling that everything was about to change. He took a deep breath, gathering his strength. The battle for his future, his family, and the truth was just beginning. The trial, the conspiracy, it was all part of the same fight, and Musk was ready to confront it head-on. The day of the reveal arrived like a thunderstorm on the horizon. There was no going back now. Elon Musk stood before the world, poised to unveil a conspiracy that had been carefully constructed over decades. The story would go viral. The evidence would spread far and wide. Every secret, every lie that had been buried under layers of wealth and influence would finally see the light of day. But beneath the weight of that monumental task was an unexpected feeling: clarity. Musk had always been a man who thrived under pressure, who worked tirelessly to bring his wildest ideas to life. But now, the clarity that had eluded him for so long was finally present. The fog of uncertainty that had clouded his mind since the start of the trial was lifting, and the path forward was becoming clearer by the second. For the first time in a long time, Musk knew exactly what he had to do. The sun had just begun to set over the horizon, casting an amber glow over the city. Musk was sitting in a secure room with his legal team, Nathan Daniels, and several trusted journalists who had agreed to break the story. It was a small, nondescript space, but to Musk, it felt like the center of the world. This moment was more than just about him. It was about exposing the system of power that had been built on secrecy and manipulation and showing the world the truth. "Elon, are you sure about this?" Nathan asked quietly, his gaze fixed on Musk. He had seen his boss take risks before, but this was something different. This wasn't just about business. This was about taking down an entire network of corruption. And once that domino fell, there would be no stopping the chain reaction. Musk's eyes met Nathan's. There was a deep calm in his expression now, a resolution that hadn't been there before. "I've never been more sure of anything in my life. The world needs to know the truth. Not just about me, but about the forces that have been manipulating everything. Our government, the economy, the future of space exploration, the planet itself. We've been lied to for too long." Nathan nodded, his usual stoicism faltering just a little. "I've got your back, Elon. We all do. But be prepared. Once this information goes out, there's no taking it back. Your life, your companies, everything you've built. It will all be under scrutiny." Musk stood up from the table, his face hardening with determination. He was ready. He had known this moment was coming, and he had prepared for it. The trial had been the spark, but the conspiracy was the fire that needed to be put out. It was time to burn away the lies. The journalists were lined up in front of him, their cameras ready. Musk gave them a slight nod, signaling that he was ready. The room fell into an anticipatory silence. The lights dimmed as a video began to play, a meticulously crafted documentary that Musk's team had put together, complete with irrefutable evidence. The syndicate's involvement in manipulating global markets, influencing elections, and even sabotaging Musk's companies was all laid bare. The names of high-profile politicians, CEOs, and military officials flashed across the screen, each one tied to the puppet strings of the organization that had worked in the shadows for so long. As the footage played out, the tension in the room was palpable. Musk's heart was pounding in his chest, but he was calm. This was his moment to make a stand, not just for himself, but for the future. And then, the moment arrived, the emotional crescendo that would change everything. A clip flashed onto the screen, a recording of a private conversation, one that Musk himself had recorded in secret. In it, a high-ranking government official, a man who had testified against Musk earlier in the trial, was heard talking about how they planned to bring down Tesla and SpaceX. They spoke of undermining Musk's credibility, framing him as unstable, and even creating false narratives to derail his progress. It was shocking, but what made the revelation even more devastating was the mention of his family. "Take Musk down, and the rest will crumble," the voice on the recording said. "His companies, his reputation, his family, it will all be ours." The room was dead silent. The camera zoomed in on Musk's face, his eyes cold with the fury of someone who had just discovered a deeply personal betrayal. He had known it was coming, but hearing it laid bare in such a blatant, uncaring tone made the truth all the more real. The people he had trusted, the ones who had pretended to work with him, had been the very ones working against him all along. The camera shifted back to Musk, who was now standing tall. His voice was steady, but there was a fire in it, one that had not been there before. "This is the truth," he said, his words cutting through the air like a blade. "For years, you've watched as they've manipulated the system, controlling everything from the shadows. They've taken what was ours and used it to line their pockets and feed their egos. But no more. This ends now." Musk paused for a moment, letting the weight of his words settle. He could feel the momentum shifting, the sense that the world was watching. This wasn't just about the conspiracy anymore. It was about the future, about the way the world would change now that the truth was out. "For too long, we've allowed these forces to control our lives," Musk continued. "But now, it's our turn to take back control. This isn't just about one man. It's about all of us. It's about the world we leave behind for the next generation. And we won't let them take that from us." With those final words, the room erupted into a mix of gasps and applause. The journalists, the team behind the scenes, even Nathan. They were all in awe of the courage Musk had shown. He had not only exposed the conspiracy, but he had given the world a message of hope. There was power in the truth, and Musk had just shown the world that it could no longer be ignored. But for Musk, this wasn't the end. It was the beginning of a new chapter. The trial, the conspiracy, it had all led to this. The stakes had been raised, but now, with the truth on his side, Musk knew that he could take on whatever came next. The fight for the future had only just begun, and he was ready for it. As the cameras flashed and reporters rushed to interview him, Musk couldn't help but feel a sense of peace. The battle was far from over, but he had already won. The truth was out. The world would never be the same. The immediate aftermath of Elon Musk's bold revelation was like a bombshell dropped in the middle of a crowded room. The story was everywhere. News outlets, social media, podcasts, and cable channels, nothing else mattered. The world was captivated by the truth Musk had just unleashed. The revelation was unprecedented, not just for Musk, but for the entire global system. Musk had always known that his every move would be scrutinized under a microscope, but this was different. This wasn't just about Tesla or SpaceX anymore. This was about an entire network of corruption that stretched across governments, corporations, and institutions. The way people viewed the power structures in place would never be the same again. The immediate reaction was one of shock. The world had known there were shadowy figures in the background, pulling strings and exerting influence, but the extent to which these forces had infiltrated the highest levels of society was mind-blowing. From conspiracy theorists to average citizens, everyone was left questioning how far the rot went. How many more powerful figures were involved? What was next? For Musk, the next few days were a blur. He was bombarded by calls, media interviews, and questions from every direction. But it wasn't just about defending himself. It was about leading this new charge for change. Musk had spent years building his empire with the goal of revolutionizing space travel, energy, and even transportation. But now, there was an even larger vision. One that involved exposing the deepest corners of corruption and inspiring others to take a stand. The pressure was immense. His legal team worked overtime to navigate the fallout, helping him brace for the expected counterattacks from the syndicate. They were going to come after him. That was inevitable. But Musk had never backed down from a fight, and this one would be no different. The morning after the public unveiling, Musk sat in his office, staring out over the cityscape as the first rays of sunlight pierced through the clouds. It was a rare moment of quiet amidst the chaos, and it gave him time to reflect. His thoughts lingered on the personal cost of the decision, the toll it had taken on his relationships, his family, and even his sense of security. His sister, Tosca, had called earlier that day. Her voice was shaken, but she was doing her best to stay strong. She thanked him for exposing the truth, but there was an underlying fear in her words that Musk could not ignore. They had not anticipated how quickly things would escalate. The syndicate was not just an abstract enemy anymore. It was a living, breathing entity with immense power and resources. They wouldn't stop, and neither could he. But it wasn't just Tosca he was worried about. He had always struggled with balancing his personal life with his professional ambitions, and now, with everything in the open, he had no choice but to deal with the fallout. Musk had built his companies, his legacy, on the idea of changing the world. But how could he continue to push forward with such enormous stakes at play? The phone rang, pulling Musk from his thoughts. It was Nathan. "Elon, I know this is a lot to process, but we need to talk." Nathan's voice was urgent. "There's been a shift. Some of the people you named in that video are already working to discredit you. We've got media outlets spinning it in their favor. The backlash is coming." Musk gripped the phone tighter, bracing for the inevitable. "I knew it was coming. What's our next move?" "We need to keep up the pressure. They're going to try and play the conspiracy theorist card, but we've got to keep our story consistent." "We have the truth on our side," Nathan said. "I'm also hearing rumors that they're going to target some of our key projects, especially the Mars initiative. If they can sabotage that, they'll cripple us." Musk's mind raced. "The Mars project has always been my vision. If they go after that, it's not just about money. It's about the future of humanity. We can't let that happen." "I know. That's why we need to prepare for all possible scenarios," Nathan replied. "We can't underestimate how far these people will go." Musk's jaw clenched. It was a war now. A war for the future, for his vision, for everything he had worked toward. He wasn't going to let this moment slip away. The truth had set the world on fire, and now, it was time to use that fire to fuel a revolution. Later that afternoon, Musk addressed the public once more. This time, however, it wasn't just about the conspiracy. This was about the next steps, about his vision for the future despite the storm of adversity that was coming. He appeared live on a major news network, looking calm but resolute. The cameras rolled, and Musk spoke directly to the world. "I want to be clear about one thing," he said, his voice firm. "The syndicate may have thought they could silence me. They may have thought they could bury the truth. But they're wrong. What we've done here is far bigger than me, far bigger than Tesla or SpaceX. It's about creating a future where truth, innovation, and progress are never held hostage by those who seek to control everything for their own gain." He paused, letting the weight of his words sink in. "The future is built by people who are willing to stand up, even when the odds are stacked against them. That's what I've always believed. And that's why we're going to Mars. We're not just building a colony on another planet. We're building a future free of the corrupt systems that have held humanity back for too long." Musk's words reverberated across the world. They were more than just a call to arms. They were a reminder that the future could still be shaped by those willing to fight for it. And Musk was ready to fight. The days that followed were a whirlwind. There were legal battles, media attacks, and more threats from the syndicate. But there was also a swelling sense of momentum. People from all corners of the world were rallying around Musk's vision, drawn in by the raw authenticity of his message. His companies were facing more scrutiny than ever, but they were also receiving unprecedented support. It was as if the truth had unlocked a door to a new era, one where people were ready to stand together and reject the systems that had kept them in the dark for so long. Musk knew it wouldn't be easy. The road ahead would be fraught with challenges, and the forces he had exposed were not going to let him walk away unscathed. But now, more than ever, he believed in the power of truth. And with that belief, Musk was prepared to fight not just for himself, but for every person who had ever been lied to, manipulated, or held back by the powers that be. The world was watching, and it was time for them to see just how far Elon Musk was willing to go. It didn't take long for the backlash to begin. Elon Musk had known this day was coming, but he had underestimated the scale of the counterattack. The syndicate, the shadowy collective of powerful figures he had exposed, was ruthless. Musk's bold revelation had rocked the foundations of their empire, and they were not going to let him get away with it. The first signs of retaliation came swiftly. Musk's personal assets, companies, and even his reputation were immediately under siege. Media outlets that had previously praised him as a visionary were now questioning his mental stability. Headlines shifted from Elon Musk, the truth revealed, to Elon Musk, a man obsessed with power and conspiracy. News anchors picked apart every word he had said, scrutinizing his tone, his body language, and even his past actions to paint him as someone unfit to lead, let alone expose the truth. It wasn't just the media that was turning against him. Political figures that had once aligned themselves with Musk's ambitions quickly distanced themselves from him, fearing the repercussions of being tied to someone now branded as a conspiracy theorist. These figures had their own skeletons to hide, and they weren't about to be implicated in Musk's war with the syndicate. Behind the scenes, the syndicate was pulling strings even more powerfully than Musk had anticipated. His projects were being systematically sabotaged. Supply chains were disrupted. Key executives resigned under mysterious circumstances, and financial backers began to pull their support. It was as if the world was turning against him. Musk, however, was not someone who would bow to pressure. He had faced adversity before, but this was different. This was personal. The syndicate was not just trying to take down his companies. They were attempting to erase everything he had built, to wipe out his legacy. They wanted to send a message. No one, not even the richest man on earth, could threaten their grip on power. It was late one night when Musk sat in his office, going over the latest developments. His face was drawn, tired from the constant barrage of attacks, but his resolve was stronger than ever. He wasn't going to let them win. He couldn't. Too much was at stake. His phone buzzed, breaking the silence. It was Nathan. "Elon, we need to talk." "It's getting worse," Nathan said, his voice heavy with urgency. "They're going after your family. Tosca, they're threatening her." Musk's heart skipped a beat. The thought of Tosca, his sister, the one person who had always been there for him, caught in the crossfire, sent a rush of fury through him. "Tell me what happened," Musk demanded. Nathan took a deep breath. "It's not just threats. They've been following her. She received an anonymous message today. It said if you don't stop your crusade, they'll make her life a living hell. We've also heard rumors that there's a plan to have her discredited in the media, make her out to be unstable, just like they're doing to you." Musk's hand clenched into a fist. They had crossed the line. This was no longer about business or a fight for the truth. This was about his family, and there was no way he would let them get away with it. "I'll handle it," Musk said, his voice cold and determined. "Tell Tosca to stay close to home. I'm putting additional security in place. I'm not going to let them touch her." But Nathan's voice wavered. "Elon, it's not just her. They're going after everyone you care about. We've got reports that they've already made moves on other key people in your life, including your team at SpaceX. If we don't act fast, we're going to lose everything." Musk leaned back in his chair, thinking furiously. The stakes were higher than ever, and the weight of the situation bore down on him like a ton of bricks. But there was one thing he knew. He wasn't going to let them intimidate him. The world had already seen what he was capable of, and he wasn't about to let his enemies think they could control him with threats and fear. "Elon," Nathan's voice broke through his thoughts. "What's the next move?" Musk's eyes narrowed. "We hit back harder. They want a war? Let's give them one. But this time, we're not just defending ourselves, we're going on the offense." The next few days were a whirlwind of action. Musk's team of lawyers, cybersecurity experts, and private investigators worked around the clock, gathering information, tracking down the players behind the syndicate, and preparing a new strategy. Musk had always been a master of strategy in the business world, but this was different. This was a fight for his future, and his family's future. One of Musk's closest allies, a former military strategist named Daniel Brooks, was brought in to assist with the tactical side of things. Musk and Daniel met in person late one night to go over the plan. "We need to get ahead of this before it escalates further," Daniel said, his expression hard. "We've got to hit them where it hurts. Their money, their connections, their influence. It's time to go after their own operations." Musk nodded. "I've already started pulling strings. We'll launch a coordinated attack on their financial holdings. The syndicate's power lies in its wealth, and if we can disrupt that, we can weaken them." Daniel raised an eyebrow. "Are you sure about this? We're talking about exposing more than just their corruption. We'll be coming after their entire infrastructure." Musk leaned forward, his gaze unwavering. "I'm sure. The world needs to see that these people are not untouchable. We have the means, the resources, and the truth on our side. It's time to put the full force of our efforts into taking them down." The first part of Musk's plan was executed with military precision. His team launched a massive data leak, revealing a vast network of offshore accounts, shell companies, and illegal transactions that the syndicate had used to launder money and fund their operations. The details were damning. In an instant, the financial world began to unravel. Simultaneously, Musk's legal team filed a series of lawsuits against the most powerful members of the syndicate, aiming to seize control of their assets and force them into public court battles that would expose their illegal activities. Musk had already prepared a team of investigative journalists who were now working to publish exposés on each of the figures involved, pulling back the curtain on their shady dealings. The syndicate, however, wasn't going to sit idly by. They fought back with everything they had, launching counterattacks, digging up dirt on Musk's past, and using their influence to undermine his credibility. The media war escalated to new heights. The battle for public opinion was fierce. But as the days wore on, something unexpected happened. The people, the ones who had been following Musk's journey, who had watched as he exposed the syndicate, began to rally behind him. His supporters grew louder, stronger. They believed in the truth he had revealed. They saw the corruption for what it was. And as more and more evidence surfaced, Musk began to feel the tides shifting. The syndicate's grip on power was weakening. The war was far from over, but Musk had taken the first steps toward victory. Every move he made was calculated, deliberate. He wasn't just fighting to win. He was fighting for something far bigger. This wasn't just about him anymore. It was about changing the world. And this time, nothing was going to stop him. The war with the syndicate was now a full-blown battle, but Musk had learned something crucial in the last few weeks. The syndicate was not just a singular, monolithic entity. It was a web, interconnected and rife with its own internal fractures. Musk had always been a visionary, someone who could think ahead, and he realized that the key to winning this war wasn't just about fighting harder. It was about turning enemies into allies. It was a dangerous strategy. Involving anyone not already aligned with his mission carried great risk, but it also carried immense potential rewards. His first step was clear. He needed to find a way to break down the syndicate from the inside out, and for that, he would need to make some unconventional alliances. Musk turned to Nathan, his trusted advisor, who had been working relentlessly alongside him. "Nathan," Musk said one evening, his voice low, "we need to do something different. It's time to reach out to the factions within the syndicate. We can't win this if we're only on the defensive." Nathan looked at Musk, his brows furrowed. "Are you suggesting we try to convince some of them to switch sides? To betray their own?" Musk nodded. "I'm suggesting we show them that the truth will come out regardless, and they'll have a choice. Stay and be consumed by it, or help us bring this system down and rebuild something better. The syndicate thrives on fear. We just need to turn that fear against them." Nathan remained silent for a long moment, absorbing the idea. It's risky. These people won't just flip overnight. We're talking about some of the most dangerous and powerful figures in the world. But we might be able to play on their own survival instincts. If they see that we have the upper hand, they might start looking for a way out. Musk's eyes glinted with determination. Exactly. It's all about showing them who's really in control. And we've got to start with someone on the inside. The next day, Musk set his plan into motion. Through a series of discreet communications, he reached out to a figure who had always been seen as a middleman in the syndicate, Victor Mercer. Mercer was a high-ranking executive within one of the largest multinational corporations in the world. While he was not one of the top players, he had a significant amount of sway within the organization. Musk had studied Mercer's career, and what he knew was that Mercer was a man who valued power above all else but had a fragile ego. If Musk could appeal to Mercer's desire for more influence and his fear of losing everything, there might be a chance to pull him away from the syndicate's grasp. Musk understood that in order to bring someone like Mercer over, he had to offer something that the syndicate couldn't. After a tense few days, Musk and Mercer finally agreed to meet. They arranged to meet in a private, secure location, an isolated cabin in the woods, far from prying eyes. When Musk arrived, he was greeted by Mercer, a man in his late 50s, tall, with sharp eyes that seemed to always be calculating. "Mr. Musk," Mercer said, his tone clipped, "I'm surprised to see you here. I thought you were a man of principle. How do you sleep at night knowing the chaos you've stirred?" Musk didn't flinch. He had anticipated the hostility. He had also anticipated that Mercer's ego would drive him to engage in this conversation. "I sleep well," Musk said coolly, "knowing that I'm doing the right thing. I'm here because I think you know it too." Mercer scoffed. "You think you can break the syndicate? You're out of your mind." Musk stepped closer, his voice low but firm. "The syndicate is crumbling. You can feel it too, can't you? All the secrecy, all the manipulation, it's all coming to light. Soon, you won't be able to hide behind them anymore. You'll be exposed, just like everyone else." Mercer's jaw clenched, but he said nothing. Musk continued, "I know you want more, Victor. I've seen your moves. You're not content with playing second fiddle. You want power, but you also fear losing it. What if I told you that you can have more than what the syndicate promised you? That you can be on the right side of history?" Mercer's eyes narrowed. "And what's the catch?" "The catch is simple," Musk said, his voice gaining strength. "Help me dismantle the syndicate from the inside, and I'll make sure you're part of the new order. A true leader, not a puppet. You can build your empire with me, on your terms." The room fell into silence as Mercer processed Musk's words. Finally, he spoke, though his voice was hesitant. "You're asking me to betray everything I've worked for, everything I've built." "You're asking yourself the same thing," Musk replied. "But think about it. What do you have to lose? The syndicate is going down. You can either be on the side of history that wins, or you can be a relic of a past that's already dead. This is your chance to build something real." Mercer was silent again. This time, it was clear he was weighing the options. Musk had given him an out, a way to break free from the suffocating grip of the syndicate and come out on top. The decision was his to make, but Musk had already planted the seed. "I'll think about it," Mercer said, his voice quieter now. "You don't have to think for long," Musk replied. "You know this is your only chance." The next few days passed with no word from Mercer. Musk had made his pitch, and now all he could do was wait. But Musk had always known that patience was key. He didn't expect Mercer to flip overnight. It was a game of chess, and this was only the first move. Meanwhile, the battle with the syndicate intensified. The media attacks grew fiercer, and legal challenges mounted. Musk's allies rallied around him, but they were also feeling the pressure. The world was watching, and Musk knew that his next move would be critical. Mercer's decision was crucial, but Musk also knew that the syndicate had more tricks up their sleeves. They would retaliate. They would try to cut Musk off at the knees, but he was ready. The walls were closing in, but for the first time in weeks, Musk felt a glimmer of hope. He was not alone in this fight, and that made all the difference. The phone rang in the dead of night, breaking the silence in Musk's office. It was a call he had been waiting for. It was Mercer. "I'm in," Mercer's voice said, low but resolute. Musk smiled. This was only the beginning. Victor Mercer's decision to join Musk was a pivotal moment in the war against the syndicate. Musk knew that Mercer's defection would give him a critical advantage, but he also understood that this was only the beginning. Now, He had to navigate the treacherous waters of corporate espionage, deceit, and manipulation, all while maintaining control over his own fractured empire. Mercer was no fool. He knew the stakes. His decision to join Musk meant he was risking everything: his career, his freedom, even his life. The syndicate was not a group of people who took betrayal lightly. But Mercer, ever the pragmatist, had weighed his options. He had watched the empire that the syndicate had built slowly crumble as Musk's revelations gained momentum. The truth was leaking out, and Mercer realized that no matter how much power he had, there was no safe place for him if the syndicate went down. He had to act fast. The first step was to infiltrate the syndicate's inner circle more deeply. Mercer was positioned perfectly. He had long been trusted by the higher-ups, and his knowledge of their operations gave him access to sensitive information. But Musk needed to be careful. They couldn't rush things. One wrong move could expose Mercer, and if that happened, the consequences would be catastrophic. The plan was simple. Mercer would act as if nothing had changed. He would continue to do his job, work within the syndicate's framework, and gather intel. Meanwhile, Musk would escalate his own efforts, pushing the syndicate into a corner from which they couldn't escape. The walls would close in, bit by bit, until the syndicate had no choice but to collapse or make a desperate move to silence Musk permanently. It was a risky game, but it was the only one that could work. Musk had always believed in being several steps ahead, and with Mercer's help, he could execute the next phase of his plan. Days turned into weeks as Mercer's presence inside the syndicate grew more critical. He fed Musk vital information about the inner workings of the organization: risky business dealings, secret offshore accounts, and hidden agendas that could blow the entire syndicate operation wide open. Musk's legal team worked overtime to turn this information into actionable intel, preparing lawsuits and uncovering vulnerabilities that could be exploited. But while Musk's side was gaining ground, the syndicate was not sitting idle. They knew that the pressure was mounting. Musk had exposed too much, and their secrets were no longer safe. Desperate, they began to target Musk more aggressively, trying to eliminate his supporters and discredit his efforts. They ramped up their media attacks, painting Musk as a delusional man obsessed with revenge. They also put pressure on Musk's closest allies, using threats and intimidation to break them. Mercer, now fully embedded in the syndicate's operations, kept feeding Musk valuable intel, but he too was walking a tightrope. The syndicate knew that Musk was a dangerous opponent, and they were watching every move he made. If they caught wind of Mercer's betrayal, he wouldn't just be discredited, he'd be finished. Musk knew this, but Mercer had given him no choice. This was a game of high stakes, and there was no turning back now. One night, Musk sat in his office, reviewing the latest information from Mercer. His eyes scanned the documents, each one revealing a new layer of corruption within the syndicate. It was staggering how deep their influence reached. From black market arms deals to corrupt political lobbying, it was all there, hidden in plain sight. "This is it," Musk muttered to himself. "We've got them." Nathan, who had been by his side throughout the war, stood by the door, arms crossed. "Are we going public with this now? We've got the evidence, Elon." Musk looked up at him, his face tense. "Not yet. We need to strike when they least expect it. If we go public now, they'll just double down on the attack. We need to make them think they're safe, just a little longer. Let them believe they're still in control. Once they lower their guard, that's when we hit." Nathan nodded, understanding the strategy. "So, we play it slow. Build the case, but don't rush. Get them to make the first mistake." "Exactly," Musk said, his voice low but determined. "We're going to make them implode from the inside. The truth is already out there. Now we need to make sure they can't escape it." Mercer continued his quiet sabotage from within. He had managed to plant a mole in the syndicate's financial department, someone who was feeding him real-time information about their illicit transactions. The syndicate was growing paranoid, but they had no idea where the leaks were coming from. The internal power struggle had begun, with some members questioning whether they should abandon ship before it was too late. Musk wasn't blind to the danger Mercer was in. The closer he got to exposing the syndicate, the more at risk he was. It was a delicate balance, one that Musk couldn't afford to lose. But he had no choice. If he wanted to bring down the syndicate for good, he needed Mercer's help, and he needed it now. One evening, Musk received a cryptic message from Mercer. It's time. They're planning something big, something that could blow everything wide open. You'll need to move fast. Musk's heart raced. This was it, the moment he'd been waiting for. The syndicate was about to make its move, and Mercer had just given him the opening he needed. He called Nathan immediately. Get the team ready. We're going to hit them where it hurts. The next few days were a blur. Musk's legal and media teams worked in overdrive, preparing for a final, all-out assault on the syndicate. They had everything they needed: documents, recordings, insider testimony. All the pieces were in place. But Musk knew that this wasn't just about evidence. It was about timing. If they moved too soon, they risked tipping off the syndicate. If they waited too long, they might miss their chance. Musk had always been a risk-taker, and now more than ever, he felt the weight of the gamble. The syndicate was reeling, on the verge of panic. Musk knew that the cracks were widening, and soon, they would have no choice but to make a move, one that would expose them completely. The clock was ticking, and Musk was ready to strike. As the final preparations were made, Musk stood by the window of his office, looking out over the city. The lights twinkled below, but inside, he felt a sense of calm. The storm was coming, and this time, he was ready. This was the beginning of the end for the syndicate. Musk stood at the center of the war room, surrounded by his closest allies, all of them on edge. The air was thick with anticipation, but there was also a quiet confidence that ran through the room. They had made it to the final step. The information had been gathered, the evidence meticulously compiled, and the pieces of the puzzle were finally coming together. Now all that remained was the execution. This is it, Musk said, breaking the silence. We've built everything up to this point. We can't afford to hesitate now. We need to hit them hard, hit them fast, and we need to make sure they can't crawl back. Nathan leaned forward, his voice steady. We're ready. The media team is prepared to release everything as soon as we get the signal. The legal team's already lined up the lawsuits and subpoenas. Once we make our move, there's no going back. Musk nodded, his expression resolute. Let's make them pay for every lie they've told, every person they've hurt. The world needs to know who they really are. As the final countdown began, Musk's team was in high gear. Lawyers, investigators, and media specialists were all working in sync, ready to unleash a storm that would shake the syndicate to its very core. Mercer had provided everything they needed: emails, financial transactions, recordings, even secret communications between top syndicate leaders. It was the kind of damning evidence that could bring down the entire organization. But Musk knew the real danger wasn't in the evidence. It was in the reaction. The syndicate wasn't going to sit idly by and let themselves be exposed. They would fight back, probably harder than ever before. Musk couldn't afford to underestimate their power. We'll hit them in phases, Musk explained to his team. First, we release the media stories. They won't be able to stop the press once it's out there. Then, the legal documents follow. Let them try to deny it when the truth is in their face. Nathan gave a grim smile. Let's see how they handle being exposed for what they are. The moment had arrived. Musk's media team launched the first salvo, a carefully crafted expose revealing a web of corruption, money laundering, illegal arms deals, and political manipulation orchestrated by the syndicate. The press release went live, and within minutes, it was all over the news. The story spread like wildfire across social media, sparking outrage and disbelief. The world was finally seeing the truth. Musk's phone rang nonstop, reporters calling for statements, allies offering support, and even some of his enemies questioning their own positions. But Musk didn't answer the phone. He wasn't interested in talking. He was interested in watching the syndicate squirm. As predicted, the syndicate's leaders immediately went on the defensive. They denied everything, called the evidence fabricated, and tried to shift blame onto Musk, claiming it was all an elaborate smear campaign. But the more they denied, the more the world watched, the more people dug deeper into the story. The evidence was undeniable, and the public wasn't buying their lies anymore. Mercer's role in all this was critical. He had not only provided the information, but had also been feeding Musk live updates from inside the syndicate as the situation unfolded. Mercer's position within the organization gave Musk a rare glimpse into their inner turmoil. The syndicate's leaders were panicking, trying to figure out how to handle the storm that was threatening to unravel everything they had worked for. But there was one final twist. Musk had expected backlash, but he had not anticipated the sheer scale of the retaliatory measures the syndicate would take. They didn't just want to fight back with words, they were going to strike back physically. As the media frenzy reached a fever pitch, Musk received a chilling message from Mercer. They know. They're planning something big. You're in danger. Musk's heart raced. This was the moment he had feared, the point where everything could spiral out of control. The syndicate was desperate, and desperate people did desperate things. Get the team to secure the perimeter, Musk instructed Nathan. We've got to be prepared for anything. As Musk's team scrambled to secure their headquarters, the sense of urgency grew. The syndicate had long operated in the shadows, pulling the strings from behind the scenes. Now, with their backs against the wall, they were going to try to take Musk down by any means necessary. Hours passed in a blur, with Musk and his team working tirelessly to stay one step ahead. The media storm had only intensified, but the syndicate wasn't done yet. Musk had to be ready for what would come next, their final, desperate move. Just as Musk was beginning to think he could breathe a little easier, the phone rang. It was a call he had been dreading. Musk, a voice said on the other end. It was one of his trusted associates, breathless and panicked. They've made their move. They're coming for you. The world around Musk seemed to freeze. His team had been prepared for legal retaliation, for public slander, but this was something else entirely. The syndicate wasn't just trying to ruin his reputation, they were trying to eliminate him. I'll handle it, Musk said, his voice calm despite the tension that gripped his chest. Get everyone to the safe house. I'll meet you there in an hour. As he hung up the phone, Musk's mind raced. The syndicate had underestimated him. They had thought they could break him, but Musk had always known that in this battle, the truth was his weapon. He had set this trap in motion, and now, the syndicate had walked right into it. But the game was far from over. Musk had to play it carefully. He had to make sure that this was the final blow to the syndicate's power, one they couldn't recover from. Musk made his way through the back corridors of his building, his mind focused. He could feel the weight of the moment pressing down on him, but he refused to let fear control him. He had fought too hard to let it slip away now. The syndicate might have been powerful, but they were nothing compared to the force of truth and determination that Musk had at his disposal. As he reached the exit, Musk paused, looking out at the city skyline one last time. The storm was far from over, but this was the moment he would seize. He was ready, and when the dust settled, it would be Musk standing victorious, not just for himself, but for everyone who had been affected by the syndicate's web of corruption. Meanwhile, the syndicate was starting to crumble. Musk's strategy of applying pressure from all angles, public exposure, legal action, and internal disruption, had finally caught up with them. Their leaders were panicking, their communications were unraveling, and their resources were depleting. But Musk wasn't done yet. As the syndicate collapsed under the weight of its own lies, Musk prepared for the final confrontation. The truth had already begun its work. Now it was time to finish what he had started. Hit subscribe and leave a comment with where you're watching from. This story might just spark a new beginning. What's one thing that always pushes you forward, even when things get tough? The storm Musk had unleashed on the syndicate was already causing seismic tremors. The media's frenzy was feeding off every new revelation, turning public opinion against the organization at lightning speed. But Musk knew that the real battle was not in the headlines. It was in the shadows, where the syndicate would try to regroup and strike back with everything they had left. It was at this critical juncture that Musk decided to go on the offensive, but with caution. His strategy was simple but brilliant. He would lure the syndicate into an inescapable trap. He had to make them believe they still had the upper hand, give them a sense of false security so that when the final blow came, it would be devastating. The first phase of Musk's counterattack was a calculated media silence. After the initial wave of explosive revelations, Musk's public presence became sparse. He wasn't seen in interviews or making statements to the press. Instead, he allowed the story to settle into the background, letting the pressure build on the syndicate without any new distractions. At the same time, Mercer was working tirelessly inside the syndicate's ranks, providing Musk with valuable updates. The syndicate was scrambling to find their footing, patching leaks and trying to reframe the narrative, but they were on the defensive and growing more paranoid by the hour. Musk knew they would retaliate in some way. The power brokers within the syndicate had resources, connections with the highest echelons of government, law enforcement, and private security. But Musk also had something that they didn't: time, patience, and his ability to think 2 steps ahead. The truth was that the syndicate was crumbling from within. Even though they had vast influence, their grip on control was slipping. The next move came when Musk was quietly summoned to a covert meeting with his closest allies. Nathan, Victor Mercer, and a select few members of Musk's team gathered in a secured underground bunker. The room was dimly lit, the walls lined with screens displaying live data feeds and news reports. Musk stood at the head of the table, his expression cold and calculating. "Here's the deal," Musk began, his voice steady. "We've fed them enough rope to hang themselves. The syndicate thinks they're winning by discrediting the press and silencing those who speak out. But we're going to flip the script." Nathan leaned forward, nodding. "You want to let them make the first move. Once they strike, we'll have everything we need to finalize this. But we need them to act first. They can't know we're prepared." "Exactly," Musk confirmed. "I'm going to stage a public appearance. Let them think they've cornered me. We'll make it look like I'm vulnerable, that I'm retreating into hiding. They'll think they've got me on the ropes. That's when we hit back with everything we have." Mercer, his face grim, added, "And we need to make sure the media keeps their eyes on us. The second they make a move, we'll be ready to expose the rest. The walls are closing in." Musk looked around the room, his eyes sharp. "This isn't just about bringing down the syndicate. This is about taking away their power, their fear. We want them to know they're finished before they even realize what hit them. This is the last chapter of their story, and we're going to write the ending." The plan was set into motion the next day. Musk made his first public appearance in weeks at a high-profile charity event, his face a perfect mask of composure. Cameras flashed, reporters swarmed, and the world watched with bated breath, wondering what Musk would do next. It was the exact image the syndicate was hoping to see: a man on the edge, ready to collapse under the pressure of his own revelations. But Musk had other plans. He gave a brief, calculated speech. His words were measured, not revealing too much, but just enough to keep the syndicate guessing. He spoke of redemption, change, and moving forward. He made it clear that despite the attacks on his reputation, he was committed to his mission. There was an air of quiet strength about him, and he made no mention of the syndicate's machinations. Behind the scenes, Mercer was gathering more crucial evidence, feeding Musk real-time updates. The syndicate had indeed made their move. As Musk had predicted, they were trying to orchestrate a final push, one that would not only destroy Musk but also destabilize his financial empire. They were plotting an all-out attack on his assets, using their influence in corporate and governmental circles to seize control of Musk's holdings. But Musk was already one step ahead. As he spoke, his legal and financial teams were coordinating a counteroffensive. They had already secured the necessary court orders to freeze several key accounts tied to the syndicate's illicit activities, a move that would cripple them financially if executed correctly. Musk was also working closely with law enforcement to expose the final layers of corruption within the organization. Back in the war room, Musk's team was working in overdrive, preparing for the final takedown. The walls of the syndicate were closing in, and it was only a matter of time before they made their final move. But Musk had anticipated their actions. He had already set up a series of fail-safes, including digital assets that would lead investigators straight to the heart of the syndicate's operations. "Is everything in place?" Musk asked Nathan, his eyes scanning the data reports on the screen. "Everything's lined up. The moment they act, we can strike. Mercer's ready with the final round of evidence. We've got the world watching, and we've already connected the dots between the syndicate and their various illegal enterprises. The government will have no choice but to act." Musk nodded. "Good. Once this goes down, there's no coming back for them." As the final pieces of the puzzle fell into place, Musk allowed himself a rare moment of calm. He thought back to the day when he first set this plan into motion, the day when he decided to take on the syndicate and expose their corruption to the world. He had known it wouldn't be easy, but he had never been one to back down from a fight. The final piece of his plan was to send the syndicate one last message. It wasn't just about exposing their corruption. It was about showing the world that no one, no matter how powerful, could hide behind their lies forever. The syndicate, meanwhile, was gearing up for what they thought would be the final battle. They had already made the decision to go after Musk with everything they had left. They were ready to burn bridges, destroy anyone who stood in their way, and seize Musk's empire once and for all. But what they didn't know was that Musk was ready to strike back. As the syndicate plotted their next move, Musk's trap was set. And when they took the bait, it would be the end of them. The hours before Musk's final strike were tense. The world had been watching him closely, waiting for the next move. The syndicate had tried to stay one step ahead, but Musk had been anticipating their every move. Now, as his plan reached its culmination, he could feel the weight of the moment pressing on him. There was no turning back. Everything had been set into motion, and this was the final act. Inside the high-tech war room, the screens flashed with real-time updates. Musk sat at the center of the room, his hands steepled in front of him, his face composed but focused. Nathan stood by his side, quietly observing the data streaming in. "We're tracking their movements," Nathan said, his voice steady but with an undercurrent of urgency. "They're gearing up for something big. They've gone quiet on the media front. It's coming." Musk didn't answer immediately. Instead, he looked at the feeds, his mind calculating their next steps. He had spent weeks preparing for this moment. He had made sure every detail was accounted for, every piece of evidence in place, and every ally positioned to strike at the right moment. The syndicate, despite all their power, was beginning to crumble under the weight of their own deceit. They had tried to fight back with everything they had, spreading false rumors, bribing journalists, and pressuring lawmakers to protect their interests. But none of it had worked. The more they fought, the more the truth slipped through their fingers, and now there was no escape. Musk stood up, walking slowly toward a large map of the city displayed on the wall. His fingers traced the locations of various key assets, from government offices to corporate buildings, the very heart of the syndicate's influence. "This ends tonight," Musk said, his voice calm but resolute. "Once we expose them, they won't be able to recover. We make sure the public sees it all. Their power won't be just dismantled. It will be destroyed." Meanwhile, inside the syndicate, panic was starting to spread. Their leaders had gathered for a final strategy meeting in an undisclosed location, unaware that Musk's final counterattack was already set into motion. They had underestimated him at every turn, assuming that their influence, wealth, and connections would shield them from any consequences. But now, as the walls began to close in, they could no longer ignore the truth. "The media's not buying our denials anymore," one of the syndicate's leaders, a man named Harris, growled. "Musk's people are everywhere. He's got us cornered." "What are we going to do?" another leader asked. "We've tried everything. The public's turned on us. The government's breathing down our necks. If we don't do something fast, we'll lose everything." "Calm down," said Victor Falk, the most powerful and dangerous leader in the syndicate. "We've handled worse. We can still spin this. We need to discredit Musk, attack his credibility, and make sure the world doesn't believe a word of his lies. He can't defeat us if he's not taken seriously." But even Falk's confidence was beginning to waver. The syndicate was losing its grip. The corrupt empire they had built over decades was beginning to crack, and they were running out of options. They knew Musk wasn't just going to walk away. He had already put them in check. The only thing left to do was to attempt a last-ditch effort to destroy him before he could complete his final strike. Back at Musk's headquarters, the tension was palpable. Every moment felt like an eternity as the clock ticked closer to the moment of reckoning. Musk's legal team, working closely with law enforcement, had already secured warrants for key arrests. Financial transactions linking syndicate leaders to illegal activities were ready to be made public. And Musk had a final piece of evidence, one that, if revealed, would expose the very core of the syndicate's operations and bring down the most powerful figures in the organization. "I'm not just going to take them down," Musk told Nathan, his tone sharp. "I'm going to show the world how deep their corruption runs. I want everyone to see the full picture. The bribes, the cover-ups, the lives they've ruined." Nathan nodded. "It'll break them." "Exactly," Musk said. "But we need to make sure they can't slip away. If they have a chance to regroup, they'll find a way to strike back. This has to be decisive. As the final phase of Musk's plan unfolded, the world began to feel the tremors of change. News outlets, law enforcement agencies, and government bodies began acting in concert, flooding the airwaves with the devastating revelations about the syndicate's activities. Media stories broke wide open, exposing money laundering, human trafficking, illegal arms deals, and a range of corrupt practices that had been hidden for years. The syndicate's response was swift and violent. They attempted to manipulate the narrative one last time, accusing Musk of orchestrating a smear campaign, of fabricating the evidence in an attempt to destroy them. They rallied their supporters and tried to discredit the stories with counter-narratives. But it was too late. The truth had gained too much momentum. The evidence was too overwhelming. And then, as Musk had anticipated, the syndicate made their final move. They launched a coordinated cyber attack against Musk's companies, attempting to cripple his financial operations, damage his reputation, and derail his plans. It was their last-ditch effort to take Musk down and keep their empire alive. But Musk was ready. The attack came like a storm, ruthless, relentless, and destructive. The syndicate's hackers targeted his data centers, attempting to erase critical information and sabotage his companies. But Musk had already anticipated this. His cybersecurity teams had built sophisticated defenses, ready to fend off even the most sophisticated attacks. They quickly neutralized the threat, locking down their systems and securing the data. And then, Musk struck back. Within hours, a new wave of revelations hit the media. Musk's team had launched a counteroffensive, releasing damning evidence that connected the syndicate's leaders directly to the cyber attack. Every step of their operation was exposed. Every attempt to cover up their crimes laid bare for the world to see. Musk's team had already traced the cyber attack's origins back to the syndicate servers and had compiled irrefutable proof of their involvement. The syndicate had no place left to hide. As the news spread like wildfire, global governments began moving swiftly. Interpol issued warrants for the syndicate's leaders, and law enforcement agencies around the world began rounding up their key operatives. The weight of the evidence, combined with the sheer public outcry, made it impossible for anyone to defend them. The once feared empire of the syndicate had been shattered. Musk, standing in the midst of the chaos he had created, allowed himself a brief moment of reflection. The fight had been long, and it had cost him much, but he had won. The syndicate was finished, and in its place, a new world, one built on transparency, integrity, and justice, was beginning to take shape. But Musk wasn't done yet. He still had one final message to deliver. A message to everyone who thought they could abuse their power and escape unscathed. And this time, it would be personal. Send the message, Musk said, his voice firm. Let the world know that this isn't just about exposing corruption. It's about holding people accountable. No one is above the law. With that, Musk's team pushed the final button. The world watched as the syndicate's downfall unfolded in real time. Every arrest, every revelation, every piece of evidence. The weight of the truth was unbearable. And as the dust settled, Musk knew that this wasn't just a victory for him. It was a victory for everyone who had ever been silenced, manipulated, or oppressed by the corrupt powers that had ruled for too long. The syndicate had been exposed, and it would never rise again. As the fallout from the syndicate's collapse rippled through the globe, the eyes of the world were fixed on Elon Musk. The battle was over. The syndicate, once a shadowy and powerful force, had been brought to its knees. Leaders were arrested, assets frozen, and the magnitude of their corruption was now an open secret. Yet, as the dust settled and the world processed the seismic shift in power, Musk knew the fight wasn't truly over. He had accomplished the impossible, but the consequences were far-reaching. The syndicate's fall was just the first chapter in a much larger story. The next steps would determine how deep this change would go, and whether the system itself, the very foundation of power, could be rebuilt in the image Musk envisioned. The night after the global crackdown on the syndicate, Musk sat alone in his office. The lights in the room dimmed as he gazed out the floor-to-ceiling windows, watching the city below. He had always believed in the power of innovation to change the world, but now, his actions had transcended that belief. This wasn't about technology or business. It was about dismantling a system of corruption that had choked progress for decades. Nathan entered the room, his expression grim yet determined. "It's over, Elon. They've been taken down. The last of their operatives are in custody. The world is watching, waiting to see what you'll do next." Musk didn't respond immediately. He was lost in thought, running through the many potential moves ahead. There was no map for this moment. The syndicate had been more than just a business rival or a corrupt organization. It was the manifestation of a much older, deeper problem. And Musk knew the real work was just beginning. He turned to Nathan, his eyes steady. "The system that created them, those are the chains we need to break next. We've exposed the syndicate, but now we need to fix what allowed them to thrive in the first place." Nathan looked skeptical. "You're talking about dismantling the entire system, everything? That's going to ruffle a lot of feathers. Not everyone is going to be happy with what you're proposing." Musk's lips curled into a faint smile. "What are they going to do? Try to stop me?" Across the globe, reactions to the syndicate's collapse were mixed. Some hailed Musk as a hero, a man who had done what many thought impossible, exposing the darkness that had poisoned the highest levels of power. Others were far less enthusiastic, seeing Musk's actions as a threat to the status quo, a disruption of the delicate balance of global politics and corporate interests. In Washington, D.C., the aftermath of the arrests led to intense debates among lawmakers. Some pushed for immediate reforms to ensure that the syndicate's influence could never rise again. Others, however, saw the revelations as a warning, a sign that Musk's growing influence was a power that needed to be checked. Meanwhile, in Silicon Valley, Musk's own empire stood tall, but there was a sense of unease. His ventures, once seen as groundbreaking, were now under intense scrutiny. Investors were asking questions, and competitors were watching carefully. Would Musk's new campaign to root out corruption be the beginning of a new era of transparency, or the start of a new war for control? The first public appearance Musk made after the syndicate's fall was at a global press conference. The world's media outlets gathered in droves, eager to hear Musk's next move. The air was thick with anticipation. Was he done? Had he secured his place in history as a singular force for justice, or was this only the beginning of a much greater challenge? As he walked onto the stage, the audience fell silent. Musk's demeanor was calm, almost contemplative, but his presence was magnetic. He had always been a figure who stirred controversy, but there was no mistaking the gravity of the moment. He wasn't just a CEO or inventor anymore. He was a symbol of change. He began speaking, his voice clear and steady. "The collapse of the syndicate is a victory, but it is not the end. What we've learned from this fight is that corruption is not an isolated issue. It is part of a larger system that has allowed powerful elites to manipulate entire nations, economies, and people for their own gain. The syndicate was only one manifestation of that. And now, we must move forward and build a new world, one where power doesn't rest in the hands of the few, but in the hands of everyone." The room was still. Some nodded in agreement. Others, particularly the political elite, shifted uncomfortably in their seats. This was more than they had bargained for. Musk wasn't just talking about cleaning up the mess. He was talking about completely reshaping the system that had allowed it to happen in the first place. "We must not only dismantle the corrupt structures that exist," Musk continued, "but we must build something better in their place. A world where innovation, transparency, and accountability are the new currencies. A world where people's lives are no longer at the mercy of faceless corporations and shadowy figures hiding behind walls of wealth and influence." The journalists' pens flew across their notepads, their cameras flashing as they captured every word. Musk was laying out a roadmap for the future, but it was clear that not everyone was on board. As the press conference ended, Musk walked out of the room, surrounded by his inner circle. The weight of the world was still on his shoulders, but he was resolute. He had laid down the gauntlet. The next few months would be crucial in determining whether his vision would come to life, or whether it would be crushed by the very system he had just taken down. Nathan caught up with him. "That was bold, Elon. Too bold, maybe." "I didn't come this far to play it safe," Musk replied, his voice unflinching. "We've already broken the system. Now we rebuild it. We give the people a chance to see what real change looks like." But even Musk could feel the weight of what lay ahead. The syndicate's collapse was only the first step. The real battle, he knew, would be against the entrenched power structures that had allowed corruption to flourish. And those structures wouldn't go down without a fight. Back at the global level, there were already signs of the backlash Musk had anticipated. The elite, the politicians, and the wealthy power brokers who had benefited from the system were beginning to regroup. They had lost the syndicate, but they hadn't lost their power, yet, and they would fight to maintain it, no matter the cost. Musk wasn't naive enough to think the road ahead would be easy. But as he looked out at the world he was determined to change, he couldn't help but feel a sense of purpose unlike anything he'd ever felt before. The battle was far from over, and the stakes were higher than ever. As Musk prepared for the next phase of his plan, he took one final moment to reflect. The fall of the syndicate had been a victory for the people, but the true work had only just begun. He knew that this wasn't just about taking down one organization. It was about exposing the entire system for what it was and giving people the tools to fight back. The road ahead would be difficult, but Musk was ready. The world was watching, and Musk was determined to show them that change wasn't just possible. It was inevitable. Musk's public announcement set off a global wave of reactions. Headlines blared across the world, but the real stories were unfolding behind closed doors, in dark rooms where the true power brokers of the world were plotting their next move. They had underestimated Musk before, but this time, they knew he was no ordinary disruptor. They were right to be worried. In the shadowy corridors of influence, where billionaires, politicians, and industry giants met in secrecy, the word was clear. Musk had to be stopped, and there was no way he was going to be allowed to tear down the system that had given them power for decades. They had tried to keep things under wraps, using the syndicate as their instrument of control. But now that it was gone, they had no choice but to come together, ready to face Musk head-on. Musk sat in a conference room at his private facility, his fingers lightly tapping on the edge of the table as he listened to his trusted advisors. Nathan stood by the large window, his eyes scanning the horizon. The air felt thick with anticipation, the kind of quiet before a storm that Musk had long grown accustomed to. "We need to prepare for what's coming next, Elon," Nathan said, his voice cutting through the stillness of the room. "The syndicate's collapse has shaken things up, but the elites, the ones who pulled the strings for so long, they're already regrouping. They won't let you tear down the system without a fight." Musk leaned back in his chair, his gaze distant. "I know they're going to fight back, but that's exactly why we have to act now. The more we delay, the more they'll strengthen their grip. They'll find a way to keep their influence, and this whole thing will be a waste." Musk's words were sharp, and though his demeanor remained calm, the fire in his eyes was unmistakable. He had made the decision. He was going to take the fight to them, disrupt their power base before they could mount any kind of organized resistance. "It's not just about bringing them down, Elon," Nathan cautioned. "We need to have a plan for what comes next. You've disrupted the system, but now we need to show people how it can be rebuilt." Musk's lips curled into a wry smile. "That's the easy part. The hard part is making sure that everyone knows who's responsible for maintaining this broken system in the first place. Once we expose the corruption, the people will see just how much they've been lied to, and then they'll demand change." While Musk and his inner circle were strategizing their next moves, a series of high-level meetings were taking place across the world. The elites, those hidden forces who had for so long controlled the flow of information, wealth, and power, were mobilizing their resources. They had faced challenges before, but nothing like this. Sitting in a luxurious conference room in Geneva, a group of influential leaders met in secret. The names on the guest list were carefully selected. Heads of multinational corporations, influential political figures, and powerful tech moguls. They were the ones who had survived past revolutions, who had weathered the storms of shifting global politics. "I don't need to remind you that Elon Musk is no ordinary player," said the man at the head of the table, his voice low and deliberate. "He's exposed the rot at the core of our system, and now he wants to tear it all down." There was a murmur of agreement around the room. Musk's rise had rattled the very foundations of their influence, and they knew that their long-standing grip on power was now in jeopardy. "We can't allow this. We've been through too much to lose everything now," one woman said, her voice sharp. The syndicate was the last safeguard we had, and now that it's gone, we need to prepare for the next battle. Another man, an older figure with graying hair, nodded in agreement. It's not enough to just fight back. We need to make an example of Musk. We need to show the world that no one, no matter how powerful, can come for the system and expect to walk away unscathed. The room fell silent as they all considered the implications. The forces that had once been too fragmented to pose a unified threat to Musk were now coming together, their collective resources poised for a counteroffensive. "We'll move quickly," the man at the head of the table declared. "We'll leverage our power, our connections. We'll control the narrative before Musk can seize it. We have to destroy his credibility before it's too late." Back at Musk's compound, the preparations for the next phase were underway. Musk wasn't naive. He knew that the elites weren't just going to sit back and let him dismantle their empire. They had already begun to push back, and the media was one of their most powerful tools. Already, stories were starting to emerge, questioning Musk's motivations and painting him as a dangerous figure, an unpredictable, power-hungry individual who couldn't be trusted. But Musk had anticipated this. He had never been one to shy away from controversy, and he knew that the media's spin could be countered. What they didn't realize was that he wasn't playing their game. Instead of hiding from the headlines, he would use them to his advantage. The key was in controlling the narrative. Musk knew that transparency would be his most potent weapon. If the world could see the corruption, the manipulation, the lies that had allowed the system to thrive for so long, they would understand why he had taken the actions he did. They would see him not as a villain, but as a hero, a figure who had done what no one else dared to do. The plan was simple, but it would require precision. Musk would launch a full-scale media blitz, but instead of just focusing on his achievements, he would expose the true extent of the system's corruption. He would use his own platforms, his own companies, to spread the message. The power of social media, combined with his global influence, would allow him to bypass traditional media and speak directly to the people. It was a risk, but it was a calculated one. And Musk knew that this would be the key to winning the hearts and minds of the public. As the days passed, Musk's team worked tirelessly to set the wheels of the next phase into motion. But the elites, too, were preparing for their counterattack. Their tactics were far less direct than Musk's. They knew that they couldn't engage in a head-on confrontation without risking everything. Instead, they would work in the shadows, using covert operations, media manipulation, and their vast wealth to chip away at Musk's credibility. It was clear that the battle for the future had entered a new phase. Musk was no longer just fighting an organization. He was fighting an entire system, one that had been built over generations. And the stakes were higher than ever. Musk stood in front of the cameras once again, the weight of the world on his shoulders. The next chapter of his mission had begun. But as the bright lights of the cameras shone down on him, he couldn't help but wonder, would the people rally behind him, or would the system prove too powerful to overcome? The answer, he knew, was still to come. Musk had been preparing for this moment his entire life. The stage was set. The elites were on one side, trying to maintain their iron grip on power, and Musk was on the other, pushing to dismantle a system that had been entrenched for generations. He had taken on the syndicate, but now he was facing something much bigger. A media war that would determine the narrative of the world's future. The battle for control of the story was about to escalate. He knew that winning the media war was just as crucial as any technological breakthrough. It was about shaping how people saw the world, and more importantly, how they saw him. The media landscape was already changing. Musk's announcement had sent ripples across the world, but the elites weren't going to let him control the narrative. In boardrooms and luxury offices, they were strategizing their next move. They had the tools, the resources, and the connections to fight back. But they also knew Musk was not someone to underestimate. He had built his empire from the ground up, and now he was using his platforms to fight back in ways they hadn't anticipated. It wasn't just about Musk anymore. It was about the system, the status quo. They needed to maintain control, and that meant taking down Musk and discrediting everything he stood for. The first wave of media backlash came swiftly. Major news outlets, many of which had deep ties to corporate interests, began running stories that painted Musk in a negative light. Headlines screamed about the dangers of his vision, warning of his alleged authoritarian tendencies. They portrayed him as someone who was playing a dangerous game of power, someone who wanted to reshape the world in his own image. The fear-mongering tactics were meant to undermine Musk's credibility and turn public opinion against him. At first, Musk wasn't worried. He knew the media would do everything in their power to stop him. But he also knew something they didn't. He had the ability to fight back, directly and unfiltered. Inside his headquarters, Musk's team was preparing for the next phase of the campaign. His public relations advisors were working overtime to craft a strategy that would cut through the noise. They understood the stakes. This wasn't just about defending Musk. It was about making sure the truth reached the public. Musk's chief strategist, Miranda, was pacing in front of a giant screen filled with data and social media metrics. "We've got a problem," she said, running her fingers through her hair in frustration. "The media's attack is gaining traction. They're framing you as an unpredictable, dangerous figure. We need to counter this fast." Musk leaned back in his chair, his face calm but intense. "What's the next move?" "We can't just react to them anymore. We need to take the narrative into our own hands," Miranda replied. "You need to speak directly to the people. No more traditional press conferences. We need something bigger, something that can't be ignored." Musk nodded thoughtfully. "Live stream. Real time. No filters. Let them see the truth firsthand." It was a bold move, but it was exactly what Musk needed to do. If he could bypass the traditional media and speak directly to his followers, he could regain control of the narrative. The more transparent he was, the more he could expose the media's manipulation and show people who he really was. And of course, the more he could rally support for his cause. The decision was made. Musk's team quickly set up an ambitious live stream event, something unprecedented. It would be broadcast to millions, showing Musk unfiltered as he addressed the world. No scripts, no rehearsed speeches, just a direct conversation about what he had accomplished, why he had done it, and how he intended to change the world. The event was scheduled for prime time, a moment that would capture global attention. Musk wanted everyone, supporters and critics alike, to hear him speak for himself without distortion. As the night of the live stream approached, tensions were high. Nathan was anxious. "Are you sure about this, Elon? The media is going to have a field day with this. There's no going back." Musk gave him a reassuring look. "There's no time for half measures. We have to be bold. If we let them control the conversation, we lose. This is the only way to take the power back." The live stream began, and the world watched in anticipation. The cameras focused on Musk, sitting in a minimalist studio surrounded by monitors and technology. He wasn't speaking to a specific group. He was speaking to everyone. The message was simple, the truth. Musk leaned forward, speaking directly to the camera. "I know many of you are skeptical. You've heard the stories, the accusations, the fears. But tonight, I'm going to speak to you directly, without filters or agendas." The room was silent, and the viewers across the globe hung on his every word. "The system we live in is broken," Musk continued. "We've all known it for a long time, but no one had the courage to do something about it. I know I've been a controversial figure. I've done things that made some people angry, made others doubt me. But I've always believed that innovation can change the world. And now, I believe the system itself must be changed." He paused, allowing the weight of his words to sink in. "The people who are attacking me right now, they don't care about you. They care about maintaining their power. They care about their money. They care about keeping everything exactly the way it is. But I'm here to tell you, we don't have to accept that. We can build a new world. A world where innovation is used for the good of everyone. A world where the corrupt forces that have held us down are finally exposed and eliminated." As Musk spoke, the live stream chat exploded with comments. Some were filled with support, others with doubt and skepticism. But there was no denying the impact Musk was having. For the first time, he was speaking directly to the world, no longer controlled by the filters of the mainstream media. The next day, the media responded. The live stream had gone viral, sparking heated debates across the world. Some hailed Musk as a visionary, a man who was finally standing up to the elites and offering a new path forward. Others remained critical, calling him reckless and dangerous. But the impact was undeniable. Musk had won the first battle of the media war. He had reclaimed the narrative and shown the world that he wasn't afraid to fight for his vision. In the days that followed, the pressure intensified. The elites were scrambling. They knew they couldn't allow Musk to continue gaining support, and they began deploying their own tactics, attacking Musk's credibility, launching smear campaigns, and trying to discredit his every move. But Musk wasn't backing down. He had exposed the truth, and the truth had resonated with millions. The world was waking up. Back in his office, Musk turned to Nathan with a determined look. This is just the beginning. They'll keep coming after us, but we've taken the first step. We've made it clear that the people are on our side. Now, we build. Nathan smiled, his confidence renewed. You've got them rattled, Elon. They're not prepared for this. I'm not finished yet, Musk said, a fire burning in his eyes. This is only the first round. The world is ready for change, and I'm going to give it to them. The media war had been a pivotal battle, but Musk knew it was only a matter of time before the elites would come at him with everything they had. They had underestimated him before, but now they were forced to take more drastic measures. They were regrouping, not only to maintain their grip on power, but to eliminate Musk once and for all. Behind the scenes, the influential figures who had always held the reins of global power were plotting their next move. They had already tried discrediting Musk through the media, but now it was time to escalate. They had a weapon they had yet to use. Their vast network of covert operatives, from political influence to corporate sabotage, to shadowy figures who could manipulate markets and public opinion. In the cold, dimly lit meeting room at a secret location, the elites convened once again. The stakes had never been higher. A man who had once been a mere annoyance to them had grown into a formidable adversary, and they were no longer willing to play by the rules. We can't let this continue, said Charles Delacroix, an older figure with a reputation for being a master strategist. He was one of the most influential men in global finance, and his wealth and connections had given him the power to make things happen in the shadows. If Musk is allowed to continue, it will be the end of everything we've worked for. We need to strike at his core. What do you suggest? Asked Sophia Graves, a powerful tech mogul known for her influence in the digital world. We've tried everything: media smear campaigns, financial pressure, public manipulation, but he keeps coming back stronger. Delacroix's lips curled into a thin smile. We're not playing fair anymore. Musk has always relied on his public image, his support from the masses. We need to hit him where it hurts most: his reputation. It's time to introduce the world to the man behind the mask. He turned to a younger man sitting at the far end of the table. Julian, you know what to do. Julian, an experienced hacker and information broker, nodded with a steely resolve. It's already in motion. We've tapped into Musk's private communications, his most personal conversations. There's enough here to bury him if we need to. The room fell silent as the implications of the plan settled in. This wasn't going to be just another attack. This was a full-scale, no-holds-barred attempt to destroy Musk's public persona by exposing his most private and vulnerable moments. Back at Musk's headquarters, things were looking positive. His live stream had made waves, and his message of transparency had resonated with millions. The elites had tried to dismiss him, but the people were rallying behind him. It felt like a significant turning point. However, Musk wasn't naive. He knew they wouldn't give up without a fight. He had anticipated a counterattack, but what he didn't expect was how ruthless it would be. One afternoon, as Musk was finishing a meeting with his team, his phone buzzed. It was a text from Nathan. You need to see this. Urgent. Musk opened the message, his stomach sinking as he scanned the attached file. It was a video, an edited compilation of his private conversations, moments of frustration, private thoughts, and even personal insecurities. The footage painted a distorted picture of Musk, depicting him as power-hungry, erratic, and emotionally unstable. The video had been cleverly manipulated to make Musk appear as though he was plotting behind the scenes, scheming to undermine his own companies, and showing deep contradictions between his public persona and private actions. This was the elite's final weapon. Musk's face hardened as he watched the video. His first instinct was to deny, to respond quickly with a counterattack. But something stopped him. He knew this wasn't just about him. This wasn't simply a battle to protect his reputation. This was about something much bigger. If he retaliated too quickly, it would give the elites exactly what they wanted, a scandal that could overshadow everything he had worked for. He turned to Nathan, who was standing by the door, waiting for his response. "They've gone too far," Musk said, his voice low but firm. "This isn't just about taking me down anymore. They're trying to destroy everything I stand for. We need to be smarter than that." Nathan nodded, understanding the weight of Musk's words. "So what's the play?" "We show the world exactly who they are," Musk replied. "We expose their game before they can use it against us." Within hours, Musk's team went into full damage control mode. They released a counter-statement, acknowledging the existence of the video but refuting its claims. They made it clear that the footage was taken out of context, manipulated to create a narrative that wasn't true. But Musk knew that the true power lay in his response to the elite's actions. Instead of focusing on the video, Musk turned his attention to the broader issue, the corruption within the system. He began preparing for another livestream event, this time with a focus on the people who were really pulling the strings. "I'm not going to fight back by defending myself," Musk said to his team. "I'm going to fight back by showing the world who's really behind all of this. We can't let them hide anymore." The next evening, Musk sat in front of the camera once again. This time, his message was even more direct. "The video you saw, the one they want you to believe, it's a distraction. It's an attempt to turn you against me. But I won't let them. What they don't want you to know is that they're terrified. Terrified of the truth coming out. Terrified of the world knowing that they're the ones controlling everything behind the scenes." Musk went on to expose the powerful figures who had been using their influence to manipulate the media, markets, and politics for their own gain. He didn't name names, not yet, but he gave the world enough information to start piecing together the puzzle. "This isn't just about me," Musk said, his voice growing stronger. "This is about all of us. It's about the system they've built to control us. And it's about time we take back what's rightfully ours." The response was immediate. Social media erupted with support as Musk's followers rallied behind him. The hashtag #expose the elites began trending worldwide, and people were starting to demand accountability. Musk's transparency was working. He had managed to turn the elites' attack into a rallying cry for those who were tired of the status quo. But the battle was far from over. The elites had made their move, and Musk had fought back. But they weren't going to stop now. If anything, the stakes had just gone higher. Musk had gone from being a thorn in their side to becoming the symbol of a revolution. And as the days passed, Musk knew one thing for certain. The final showdown was coming. The tension in the air was palpable. Musk had managed to turn the elite's most recent attack into a rallying cry, but the battle was far from won. With every move he made, the stakes grew higher. The elites had shown they were willing to go to any lengths to maintain their control. And now, it was time for their final play. A move that would test Musk's resolve, his resources, and his vision for the future. Musk knew that time was running out. His latest public address had garnered unprecedented support from the masses, but he also knew that the elites were still lurking in the shadows, preparing for their next move. They were not the type of people to accept defeat easily. They had too much to lose. It was only a matter of time before they would strike again, and this time, they would come at him with everything they had. He could feel it. In the weeks that followed, his team worked tirelessly to counter the waves of attacks. The media spin, the online trolls, the smear campaigns, they all intensified. Musk knew it was a matter of endurance, but deep down, he felt the weight of the constant pressure. He wasn't just fighting for himself anymore. He was fighting for a future, for the billions of people who felt trapped under the heel of an unjust system. But there was something else, something even more ominous on the horizon. Inside the boardroom of the most influential media conglomerate in the world, the elites gathered once again. Charles Delacroix was there, along with Sophia Graves, Julian, and a handful of the most powerful figures in business, politics, and finance. The room was silent as they discussed their final plan. "We've given him a chance to fight back," Delacroix said, his voice cold and calculating. "But now, we end this once and for all. He's too dangerous, too unpredictable. We can't afford to let him succeed." Sophia leaned forward, her expression unreadable. "We've tried everything. The media, the financial pressure, the smear campaigns. But Musk has turned every attack into fuel for his revolution. We need to escalate. We need to cut him off at the source. Delacroix nodded slowly. I have a plan. We don't just hit Musk's reputation this time. We hit his empire. We hit him where it hurts the most. His wealth, his businesses, his vision for the future. The others in the room exchanged uneasy glances. They knew what Delacroix was suggesting. It was a move that would crush Musk's entire operation, discredit him for good, and end the movement he had sparked. Musk had no idea what was coming. He was still focused on rallying his supporters, pushing forward with his plans to expose the corruption within the system. He continued speaking directly to the public, but every move he made seemed to draw more and more attacks from the powerful figures trying to destroy him. Then, one day, his worst fears were realized. The financial markets began to plummet, and the companies Musk had built, Tesla, SpaceX, Neuralink, and others, were hit with unprecedented levels of scrutiny. Stock prices nosedived. Investors pulled their funding. The pressure was mounting from every direction. And then the final blow came. A series of coordinated cyber attacks crippled the systems of Musk's companies. Hackers, working in the shadows, infiltrated the networks, stealing sensitive information and causing massive disruptions. Data was erased. Systems were compromised, and employees were left scrambling to recover. Musk's phone buzzed. Nathan's name flashed on the screen. Not now, Musk muttered to himself. But when the phone rang again, he picked up. Elon, we've been hacked. Nathan's voice crackled through the line. It's bad. Really bad. They've breached everything. Everything. Musk's heart raced. He tried to stay calm. What's the damage? The worst part? It's not just the data. They've spread false rumors, planted stories. They're claiming that you've been mismanaging everything, that your empire is on the brink of collapse. Musk's mind raced. He knew this wasn't just an ordinary cyber attack. This was a coordinated attempt to dismantle everything he had worked for. He had been hit where it hurt the most. As the days passed, the fallout from the attack only grew worse. News outlets were reporting on the collapse of Musk's empire, and the media was lapping up every detail. Investors were pulling out in droves, and the stock prices of Tesla and SpaceX continued to tank. People who had once supported Musk began to doubt his ability to lead, questioning whether he had the competence to hold everything together. Musk had faced challenges before, but this felt different. His companies were crumbling. His reputation was on the line. It was as if the entire system was closing in on him. But Musk was not a man who gave up easily. Sitting in his office late one night, surrounded by his closest allies, Musk stared at the glowing screen in front of him. The financial charts were grim. The media was ruthless. And yet, there was a fire burning inside him that refused to be extinguished. "We've been through worse," he said, his voice steady, though his mind was racing. "This is nothing we can't come back from." Nathan looked at him, a flicker of doubt in his eyes. "Elon, the system is rigged against us. We can't fight this on our own. We need more support." Musk stood up, his eyes intense. "We don't need more support. We need to show the world what they're really up against. They've tried to bury me, to bury everything I've worked for. But they're going to learn one thing. I won't go down without a fight." With that, Musk made a decision. It was time to reveal the full extent of the elite's manipulation. It was time to expose the puppet masters pulling the strings. He reached for his phone and sent a message to his team. "Get me everything we have on them. We're going public. It's time to make our final stand." The next day, Musk made a bold and unexpected move. Instead of focusing on the corporate recovery of his companies, he held a press conference that would shake the world. This wasn't just about business. It wasn't just about tech or finance. This was about truth. Musk stood before the cameras, his face determined but calm. "I've built these companies to change the world, to make it a better place. But what they don't want you to know is this. There are powerful people out there who will stop at nothing to maintain their control. They've tried to destroy me, to destroy everything I've worked for. But they won't succeed." The world watched as Musk exposed the corruption at the highest levels. Names, dates, facts. He revealed the full extent of the elite's manipulation and how they had been using their power to suppress innovation, control markets, and protect their interests at the expense of the people. This isn't just about me, Musk continued. This is about all of us. It's about freedom. It's about the future. And I'm not going to let them win. The response was immediate and overwhelming. The world was stunned by the revelations, and people who had once doubted Musk began to rally behind him. The elite's power had been exposed, and the tide was beginning to turn. But Musk knew the battle wasn't over. The elites would fight back, harder than ever. The final showdown was approaching, and the world was watching. Musk had made his stand. Now, it was time to finish what he had started. Musk had exposed the elites for who they truly were. The truth was out, and it was shaking the foundations of the power structures they had spent decades building. The masses were beginning to question the system that had been in place for so long. The people were waking up. The elites, however, were not about to let go of their control without one final attempt to silence him for good. Musk's team worked around the clock to prepare for what was next. The public had reacted to his revelations with overwhelming support, but Musk knew that the elites had vast resources, and they wouldn't hesitate to use them. The media was already working overtime to discredit him again, calling him a dangerous radical, a destabilizing force. Musk had grown used to being the target of these attacks, but this time, it felt different. This time, it was personal. The elites had underestimated him, assuming they could push him into submission. But Musk had spent his life defying expectations, and he wasn't about to stop now. What do we do next? Nathan asked one evening, sitting across from Musk in the war room. We've exposed them, but they're still coming for us. We're not out of the woods yet. Musk leaned back in his chair, his hands steepled in front of his face. We wait. They're not just going to let us walk away. But that's their mistake, underestimating us. They think they have all the power. They think the system is rigged in their favor. But it's not. The people are with us now. Nathan raised an eyebrow. You're not planning on sitting back and letting the public do all the work, are you? Musk smiled grimly. We're going to take the fight to them. We're going to expose everything. Everything they've been hiding. The real game is just beginning. It was a cold, overcast morning when the final pieces of Musk's plan fell into place. News outlets were still scrambling to cover the latest developments in the ongoing scandal, but Musk was preparing for the next stage of his mission. He had secured access to the highest levels of government and financial systems, everything they had used to orchestrate the system of control that had kept them in power for so long. Musk knew that the elites were desperate. They had already lost ground in the media. Now, it was time to hit them where they couldn't recover. As the final showdown loomed closer, Musk's resolve grew stronger. The elites were tightening their grip, desperately trying to reassert control over their crumbling empire. They had made their final move, a last-ditch effort to silence Musk and his revolution. And they had a secret weapon, a highly sophisticated artificial intelligence system they had developed to control global markets, influence governments, and manipulate public opinion. This AI was their ultimate tool, the last piece in their puzzle. It was designed to predict human behavior, to anticipate Musk's next move, and to counter it with ruthless precision. But Musk wasn't going to let that happen. He had one last trick up his sleeve. He had already begun working on an AI of his own, a system that could counteract the elite's AI, exposing its flaws and turning its power against them. This is it, Musk said, standing in front of a massive screen displaying the AI's architecture. If we can get this right, we can take down their entire operation. This is the key to ending their control. Nathan looked up, his expression serious. You know this won't be easy, right? They'll fight back with everything they've got. Musk nodded. I know, but we have no choice. We've already taken the first step. Now, we finish this. The operation began at midnight, with a team of Musk's top engineers working furiously to deploy their counter-AI into the global network. Musk sat in the control room, his fingers flying over the keyboard as he monitored the system's progress. Outside, the storm clouds were gathering, and the city seemed to hold its breath. The world was on the verge of something monumental. And then, it happened. At precisely 2 a.m., the elites made their move. Using their AI, they launched an all-out attack on Musk's systems, attempting to shut down his counter-AI before it could complete its mission. It was a battle of digital titans, with the two AIs clashing in cyberspace, each one trying to outsmart the other. For hours, the battle raged on, a digital war fought in the shadows. Musk's team held their breath, unsure of which side would come out on top. The elites had the advantage: years of development, vast resources, and their AI's uncanny ability to predict Musk's every move. But Musk had something they didn't: an understanding of the human element. He had designed his AI to anticipate not just the data, but the psychology behind it. He knew that the elite's AI would rely too heavily on calculations, on logic, and in doing so, it would underestimate the power of human creativity and adaptability. As the first rays of dawn broke through the clouds, Musk saw the breakthrough. His counter-AI had finally managed to breach the elite system. It was a slow, methodical process, but Musk could feel the tide turning. The elite's AI began to falter, unable to keep up with the rapid changes Musk had implemented. And then, with one final strike, Musk's AI took control. The elite's digital empire crumbled in an instant. The data that had been used to manipulate the global markets, the political systems, and the media was now exposed for all to see. The system they had relied on for years was now in the hands of the people. The world woke up to the shocking news. Musk's counter-AI had defeated the elite system, exposing the truth for everyone to see. The financial markets, which had once been under their control, were now in free fall. The political power structures they had built were unraveling. And the media, once a tool for their manipulation, was now reporting the truth. Musk's message had been clear: the power belonged to the people, not the elites. As Musk stood in front of a crowd of supporters, the weight of what had just transpired began to sink in. This was it, the final victory. The elites had been defeated. But Musk knew this was only the beginning. There was still work to be done. The world was waking up, but it needed guidance, leadership, and vision. The revolution isn't over, Musk said, his voice strong and resolute. This is just the first step. Now, we build a new future, a future where we're no longer controlled by a few. A future where innovation, freedom, and opportunity are available to everyone. The crowd erupted in cheers. But Musk didn't need the applause. He had already won the most important battle, the battle for the future. The dust had barely settled when Musk stepped out from the chaos of the final battle. The elites had been defeated, their digital empire shattered, but the world was still reeling from the shock. People had been living under the oppressive weight of the elite's control for so long that, despite their victory, the road to rebuilding wasn't going to be an easy one. Musk stood on the balcony of his headquarters, gazing out over the city. It was a city that had always represented the future, the cutting edge of innovation. But today, it felt different. It felt like a new beginning. The streets were filled with people, many of them cheering, others still trying to process the enormity of what had just happened. News stations had been broadcasting live, showing footage of Musk's victory and the collapse of the elite's power structures. The story had gone viral, reaching every corner of the globe. But Musk knew that the real work was only beginning. Exposing the elites and bringing their empire down was just the first step. Now, they needed to rebuild. They needed to make sure that the system that had oppressed the masses would never rise again. Inside the command center, Musk's team was already at work. Engineers, political analysts, economists, and strategists were working around the clock to figure out the next steps. They had won the battle, but the war to secure a free, just world was far from over. Elon, we need to start by addressing the immediate aftermath, Nathan said, entering the room. People are looking for guidance. They're wondering what happens next. How do we stabilize the world economy? How do we prevent the rise of another power structure like the one we just dismantled? Musk turned, his eyes steely with determination. The answer is simple. We put the power back where it belongs, with the people. We need to decentralize everything. We need to create a system where no single group or individual can have unchecked power. Nathan raised an eyebrow. That's a massive undertaking. It won't be easy. But we've done the impossible before, haven't we? Musk smiled. Exactly. We've got the tools, the technology, and the will to make it happen. We're not just rebuilding. We're redesigning the future. The first major step was to restructure the global economy. The old financial systems that had been controlled by the elites were now obsolete. Banks, stock markets, and corporations that had been complicit in maintaining the status quo were crumbling. But this presented a unique opportunity to create something new, something more equitable. Musk and his team began working on a blockchain-based system for the world's finances, a decentralized, transparent network that would make it nearly impossible for any one entity to control the global economy. Cryptocurrencies would play a huge role, but Musk knew that it wasn't just about digital currencies, it was about rebuilding trust. People need to know that this time, things will be different, Musk said during a meeting. We need to create a new economic model, one that's transparent, one that empowers individuals rather than enslaves them. As Musk and his team worked tirelessly on the economic restructuring, they also focused on political reform. The political systems that had been rigged by the elites were now on the verge of collapse. Governments had been manipulated, elections had been stolen, and laws had been passed to protect the interests of the wealthy. Now, it was time to change all of that. We need a system that's truly democratic, Musk said to a group of political strategists. One that represents the people, not corporations, not elites. We need direct voting systems, where every voice is heard. And we need to ensure that corruption is eradicated at every level. The work was monumental, but Musk had never been one to shy away from challenges. He knew that this wasn't just about restoring what had been lost. It was about creating something better. As the weeks passed, the world began to change. Governments were restructured. The global financial system was rebuilt. New technologies were developed to ensure transparency and fairness. Musk's vision for a decentralized, people-powered world was slowly becoming a reality. But the challenges weren't over yet. There were still pockets of resistance, people who refused to accept the new order, who were still loyal to the old ways. And, of course, there were those who had tried to fight back before. The elites who had been defeated but had not been fully vanquished. They were regrouping, hiding in the shadows, waiting for their chance to strike again. The months that followed were a blur of progress. Musk's plan for the future began to take shape. The economic model, once dominated by the elites, had been replaced with a decentralized, transparent system. Global markets were thriving, but this time, the wealth was spread more evenly. Corruption was being rooted out at every level of government, and a new era of democracy was taking hold. People who had once felt powerless were now taking charge of their own destinies. Communities were flourishing. Businesses were thriving. And the best part? The old power structures, those that had stifled creativity and innovation, had been dismantled. Musk's vision of the future was no longer just a dream. It was a reality. The world was being rebuilt, and it was a world in which no one could ever again hold the power to control it all. But even as the world embraced its new beginning, Musk knew that the road ahead would still be filled with challenges. There would always be those who sought power. There would always be resistance to change. But the difference now was that the people had the tools to fight back. The people had the power. And as long as there was hope, as long as there was a fight to be fought, Musk would be there. He would keep pushing forward. Because in the end, this was what he had always fought for. The future. A future that belonged to all of us. It was a crisp, clear morning as Musk walked through the sprawling campus of one of the new facilities his team had built, a symbol of everything they had fought for. The new era was now beginning to take shape, and it was unlike anything the world had ever seen. The skyline, once dominated by the towering glass and steel monoliths of the old regime, now featured sleek, sustainable buildings powered by renewable energy. Drones hummed overhead, carrying out tasks that once required legions of workers. The city was alive, but it was alive in a way that felt different, almost ethereal. This was the future. The future Musk had always dreamed of. It wasn't just about technology or innovation. It was about humanity evolving to meet its potential without the weight of oppression and corruption. Musk's days had become a whirlwind of meetings, press conferences, and strategy sessions. But today, he took a moment to appreciate the fruits of their labor. The systems they had put in place were now functioning as intended. Clean energy was the standard, and AI-driven cities were offering unprecedented levels of efficiency and sustainability. The global economy was beginning to stabilize, with decentralized financial systems replacing the old monopolistic structures. The world was healing, but there was still a sense that it wasn't quite finished. How's the energy grid performing? Musk asked as he walked alongside one of his lead engineers, Maria, who had been instrumental in the new energy systems that were sweeping the globe. Better than expected, Maria replied with a grin. We're generating energy from more sources than ever before. Solar, wind, even tidal. And we've already cut global emissions by more than 40%. The world is starting to see the benefits of a truly sustainable future. Musk nodded thoughtfully. That's incredible, but we need to go further. We can't stop here. Maria paused, raising an eyebrow. You're already thinking ahead? Musk smiled. There's always more to do. Innovation doesn't stop. We've created a foundation, but now we need to push the boundaries even further. Space travel, interplanetary colonization. We have the tools to change the course of humanity. Back in the control room, Musk's team was monitoring developments worldwide. They had done it. They had successfully dismantled the old system. But now, the world was at a crossroads. The battle for the future was no longer about exposing corruption or defeating the elites. It was about creating something new, a world where technology could serve the needs of every individual, where prosperity was not reserved for the few, but accessible to everyone. However, not everyone was on board with this new vision. We're seeing some pushback, Nathan said, flipping through a series of reports on his tablet. There are still pockets of resistance, particularly in some of the old power centers. Corporate giants, politicians who feel their influence slipping away. They're using every tool they have left to stir unrest. Musk frowned, leaning in. Let them try. The people have spoken, and they want change. We're building something that can't be undone. They'll resist, but they'll ultimately lose. Nathan nodded, but his eyes were filled with concern. What if they don't go down without a fight? These elites have resources, networks, and loyalists who will stop at nothing to regain control. We're not fighting a war anymore, Musk said, his tone calm but firm. We're building. What we're doing isn't just a revolution. It's evolution. The world is moving forward, and they can't stop it. They can only try to slow it down, but they won't succeed. As the days passed, Musk's prediction began to come true. The old power structures fought back, but they couldn't keep up with the speed of progress. The systems that Musk and his team had put in place were too robust, too transparent, too connected to the will of the people. The pushback from the elites came in many forms: media campaigns, attempts to discredit the new order, even acts of sabotage. But nothing worked. The people were no longer afraid. They had tasted the freedom that came with their collective power, and they weren't going to give it up easily. Then, Musk received an unexpected visitor, a former high-ranking official from one of the largest corporations that had once been at the heart of the old regime. The man had been a staunch ally of the elites, but now, as he sat across from Musk in the quiet meeting room, he seemed a different person altogether. I was wrong, the man said, his voice low. I believed in the system. I thought it was the only way. But what you've done, it's better. I can see now that you were right. Musk studied him for a moment, his expression unreadable. You're not the first to come to that conclusion, but you're the first to admit it. The man shifted uncomfortably. I want to help. I don't have much left, but I can offer you something. My knowledge, my resources, whatever it takes to make this new world a reality. Musk leaned back, considering the offer. The world doesn't need more power concentrated in a few hands. But there is a place for people who are ready to work with us. If you truly want to help, then put your knowledge to use. Help us build the new infrastructure. Help us develop the new systems. But no more power hoarding. No more manipulation. We build this together, with transparency, with fairness. The man nodded, a look of understanding on his face. I can do that. As the man departed, Musk's thoughts turned to the future. The world was changing, but there was so much more to be done. They needed to keep pushing forward, keep innovating, and keep ensuring that the power remained in the hands of the people. The new world was being built, brick by brick, system by system. It was a world where every individual could find a place to thrive, where corruption and greed no longer had a foothold, where technology was a force for good. But even as Musk stood at the forefront of this new age, he knew that the journey was far from over. There would always be challenges ahead, unforeseen obstacles, new conflicts, and resistance from those who didn't want to change. But Musk had proven time and time again that when the odds were stacked against him, he was at his best. This was his mission, not just to change the world, but to create a world where humanity could achieve its highest potential, without the shadow of oppression looming over it. And as he gazed out at the horizon, he couldn't help but feel that they were on the brink of something extraordinary. The future was not just bright, it was limitless. The sun was setting over the newly rebuilt cityscape, casting an amber glow on the horizon. It was a peaceful evening, the kind of quiet that follows a major upheaval, when the dust finally settles and the world begins to breathe again. The past few months had been a whirlwind, but now, as Musk sat atop his skyscraper headquarters, he couldn't help but feel the enormity of what had been accomplished. The battle had been fierce, and the road to victory had been long, but the foundation of a new world was in place. People were thriving in a system where they had a say in their future, a world where the digital empire of the elites no longer reigned over the masses. It was a world where power had truly been returned to the people. Musk had always believed that technology, at its best, could be the great equalizer. The world had been crippled by greed and corruption, but now, technology was the tool that could free them all. His original vision had been to break the chains that held humanity back, and now, as he surveyed the world from his lofty vantage point, he saw the promise of that vision beginning to come to life. But Musk knew that the battle didn't end with the fall of the old elites. It wasn't enough to simply defeat the oppressors. He had to ensure the new world would remain strong, fair, and just. It was up to him and his team to make sure the foundations they had laid would not crumble. As Musk entered the main conference room, his team was already gathered around the table. Nathan, Maria, and the rest of the key players were there, their faces etched with the kind of determination that only comes after a victory. Elon, Nathan said as Musk sat down, "We've made incredible strides, but we can't afford to rest on our laurels. There are still challenges ahead. There are rogue factions that haven't fully accepted the new world order. There are governments, old powers, that are still trying to regain control in subtle ways." Musk nodded, taking a deep breath. "I know, but we've come this far, and I'm not about to let this world go back to what it was. The people have spoken. They want change, and it's our job to make sure they get it." Maria spoke up, her tone pragmatic but resolute. "We've made great progress in creating a decentralized global economy, but there are still parts of the world that are stuck in the old ways. We need to accelerate the adoption of our new systems. People need to see results, or they'll lose faith." Musk turned to her, his gaze steady. "We'll give them results, but it's going to take time. We can't force change. We have to let it happen organically. That's how we'll ensure its longevity. Let the people see the benefits, and they'll fight to protect it." Nathan leaned forward, eyes gleaming with curiosity. "What do you have in mind for the next step?" Musk took a moment before responding, tapping a finger on the table. "We need to scale this revolution. We've seen how successful the new systems are in the cities where they've been implemented. Now, it's time to take it global. It's time to make this a true, worldwide movement." He stood up, moving toward the map of the world that was displayed on the wall. "We're going to expand the decentralized economy and political systems, not just in urban centers, but also in rural areas. We'll use our tech to connect the disconnected. The power of the people lies in their collective strength, and we need to give them the tools to make that power a reality." Maria was quick to respond. "You want to connect every village, every remote area to the new system?" Musk nodded. "Exactly. If we can make sure everyone, every person, no matter their location, has access to the systems we've built, then the people will truly be in control. Imagine a world where even the most isolated community has the same access to opportunity, education, and resources as the most developed cities. That's the world we're building. No one gets left behind." The next few months were a blur of activity. Teams were dispatched all over the globe, working to implement the new decentralized systems in every corner of society. They didn't just want to change the way governments worked or the way people accessed money. They wanted to fundamentally change the way people lived, to create a world where everyone had access to the tools they needed to thrive, regardless of where they came from or where they lived. Through this work, something extraordinary began to happen. As more and more communities became connected to the new systems, the lines between the developed and undeveloped worlds began to blur. People in rural villages were suddenly able to access the same technology and information as those living in the heart of major cities. Education and healthcare became more accessible. Renewable energy was shared and distributed equitably. And the best part? The new system was designed to evolve with the needs of the people. It wasn't a static system. It was dynamic, adaptable, and self-sustaining. In a sense, it was a living system that could grow and improve over time, driven by the collective will of the people. But Musk knew that this was just the beginning. There were still forces at play. Old power structures, new emerging threats, and natural forces that could derail the progress they had made. Yet, he also knew that they had created something powerful, a movement that was bigger than any one person, bigger than any corporation. This was about the future of humanity. And it wasn't about control or power. It was about freedom. Freedom from the shackles of oppression. Freedom to create, to innovate, to live without fear of those who sought to exploit and dominate. "I've spent my life dreaming about this," Musk said, looking around the table at his team. "But this isn't just my dream anymore. It's our dream, and we've made it real. We've built something that will outlast all of us. This is our legacy. A legacy of hope, of freedom, of progress. A legacy of change." As he spoke, the team's eyes shone with the same hope. They had witnessed the impossible. They had taken on the elites and won. But more importantly, they had created something that would endure, something that would transform the very fabric of human existence. That evening, as Musk stood once more on the balcony, he looked out over the city. The lights flickered in the distance, a testament to the new energy systems that now powered the world. It was a world that had been reborn. The people had done it. They had built it. Together, they had risen up, dismantled the old system, and created a new world. The work was far from finished, but the foundation was solid. The future was brighter than it had ever been. And in that moment, Musk knew with absolute certainty that this was the beginning of something extraordinary. This was just the beginning. Hit subscribe and leave a comment with where you're watching from. This story might just spark a new beginning. What's one thing that always pushes you forward, even when things get tough?